while on their heads they bear ackee rice, salt fish are nice, and the rum is fine any time of year. But I'm sad to say I'm on my way, won't be back for many a day. My heart is down, my head is turning around. I had to leave a little girl in Kingston town. Sounds of laughter everywhere, and the dancing girls swing to and fro. I must declare my heart is there, though I've been from Maine to Mexico. But I'm sad to say I'm on my way, won't be back for many a day. My heart is down, my head is turning around. I had to leave a little girl in Kingston town.
Good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. My name is Cyrus Gray. Welcome to Election Central. Today is July 30th. In today's edition, we're going to be talking about trade in Liberia. We're going to be talking about the private sector, specifically talking about Liberians' participation in the economy. In no country can achieve, no peoples in the country can achieve wealth prosperity without a developed middle class. When we speak about a capitalist system. So we're going to be looking at Liberia a little bit. What are the laws there? How are public policy designed to enhance Liberian participation in the economy, or how do they undermine Liberian participation in the economy? We'll use, for example, a neighboring Ivory Coast and some of the local business owners that are there and what they're doing for the economy. So for that, we're going to have today two guests and three guests, and my co-host Pastor Noni is going to be joining us as soon as he can. We're going to be having today Michael Rini. He's with the Liberian Business Association Diaspora group. He's going to talk a little bit about himself and his organization. We're also going to have the financial banker from the New England area, Gabriel Carter. He's going to bring his insight about access to capital and how things are done in other places in the world. And then we're going to have my old friend, Sonny Yuma. So that's the main show. In a minute, we'll start the pre-show. And the pre-show is actually based on something that started up on Facebook late in the week. What we call a political post was circulated that the Liberian Maritime Registry has now surpassed the Panama Registry, something which, having research, is not true. But I think somebody was using it to give the impression that the government is doing well because the flag has increased the number of ships. So we'll talk a little bit about maritime affairs in the pre-show. What's the relevance of even trying to make that claim? what does it mean when you say the Liberian registry? So in a minute, we'll take a break and we'll come right back and we'll begin the show. Well, let me bring on my co-host, Alfonso. How was your week, man? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm hearing you. I'm hearing you. It's okay. It's okay. Hectic as always, but that's how it's supposed to be. So, how was yours?
Yeah, kind of hectic though. We're in the process of starting a new business in Africa, and I'm running after it up and down. But
Mm.
welcome. Yeah, I hope you're fine. I see you started with that hot water. I didn't get a chance to get one.
Yeah, I just hurriedly grabbed one. I needed it.
Somewhere, yeah, somewhere you will give me the chance to get one. I've been pondering a couple of things. You saw the write out that I sent out to you just to give you a heads up.
The the points you mean, the talking
Yeah,
points.
yeah, and I've been following your post on Facebook. Guess what? Some of those things that in a week you are particular about, you probably need to develop a pre-show for it.
Uh, Such as
Well, what last week?
well, the one about Independence Day.
Yeah, last week was the week before last was the legislature.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you double down on that, and
Mm-hmm.
then the tribute to Michael Francis. That's why I piggyback on. That's why we had a
Okay.
pre-show. So I'm
Okay.
just letting you know that's those are the kind of stuff you can climax at the end of the week.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, okay. I will definitely work on that. Yeah.
Yeah, we have two of our guests in the studio already.
Okay. Great.
So today we're going to be talking about the Liberians' participation in the economy. What has been the history of our participation or the lack thereof in the
Mm-hmm.
economy? Realizing that no true growth in the population can obtain if the people who are not involved in
Yep.
the commercial transaction that actually informs their country. And to the extent that people are involved is actually derived from public policy.
Yes.
So we're gonna talk a little bit about that. But I thought to use the Ivory Coast as an example.
Mm-hmm.
So we selected a couple of business leaders, Ivorian business leaders in the Ivory Coast, what they are doing.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna highlight that a little bit. Then we'll come to Liberia. We'll talk about the question of Liberians should not be spectators in their own economy.
Yeah.
The Minister of Finance, about some 2 weeks ago, gave a lengthy interview and he addressed it. We'll run that interview and then we'll have a discussion about what the options are and what kind of prescriptions, as we are in election year, we can begin to highlight so that people who are running for public office cannot repeat some of the mistakes of the past. If you look at our country, when we talk about business in our country, the thing you think about mostly is petty trading.
Yeah.
So most leaders think that their big achievement is to build a
Market buildings. Yeah.
market building. So yeah, we're gonna go into that. But at the pre-show, we're gonna be addressing an issue that arose just a few days ago. Somebody claimed that Liberia has surpassed Panama as the leading ship registry in the world. I think it was an attempt to elevate the current administration as a good thing, but that information is wrong. So I thought it would be good, being a maritime expert, to talk a little bit about maritime.
Yep.
Uh,
Yeah.
what is the flagship, and what's the relevance of it? In fact, why would somebody even be so happy that they have increased the ship? So that's what we're going to be doing in the first few minutes for the pre-show. I like to bring on our guests. The first of them is Michael Rini. Michael is with the Liberian Business Association Diaspora branch. I think he's a member of the board. I thought we should bring him to get an idea of what they're doing and give us some perspective on how they see opportunities for Liberian business in Liberia. So, Michael, welcome to Election Central.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, Michael. Welcome as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, I also like to bring, we stay expecting Gabriel, but I like to bring on an old face, Sonny Yuma. You know Sonny? Yeah, Sonny, welcome, man. It's been a while.
Yeah, thank you, Cyrus. Alfonso, nice to meet you
Welcome.
again.
You too.
Marco, nice meeting you. Yeah.
Nice meeting you too.
Yeah, so we're going to be talking about business a lot today. This is your 40th, so I thought we couldn't do that without bringing you back in the room. So welcome. We'll go ahead with the pre-show. I did a slide, to explain a little bit. One of the things that we in Liberia, we almost automatically take as a credit is this thing that Liberia is a maritime country. What does that mean, really? I wonder how many people understand what it means. So I thought
It's very convenient.
to give a little bit of context to that, right? So in maritime, basically, it's transport of commodity. Because when you think the maritime is not passenger carriage. So even though they have cruise ships and all that, in the maritime sector, that falls more within the hospitality industry. So the cruise ship are not technically considered to be in the maritime sector because they look at them like hotel and stuff business. Maritime is basically the movement of commercial cargo of product, of petroleum products, of merchandise, either in containers or break bulk ship, iron ore, and that. And because of the complexity of that movement, because 78% of the world trade moved by these ships. So the world is dependent on that industry and that sector. So an international body is set up in the United Nations to regulate that, called the International Maritime Organization. So most countries, especially coastal states, are part of that International Maritime Organization. We have been part of it from the beginning, right? Like most African countries are. Part of what the International Maritime Organization does is to regulate that industry, basically set the rules on safety and to the modular level, they determine even what they call the storage factor. How do you load a ship? Considering that there are different classes of ship. So they got an organization that is private called Classification Society. Their job is to go and inspect the ship, make sure that they're in compliance with those rules that the International Maritime Organization set. International Maritime Organization being us. But for HO, because of the nature of the trade, international trade, the ships are mostly on no man's land. They are not in any jurisdiction, right? So if something were to happen to the ship, imagine one container ship, one global container ship now could carry about 18,000 containers, 18,000 TEUs. So if we're saying that each container belongs to a trader, that means there are 18,000 interests in those cargo on a container. So the container ships are very sophisticated now. So the crew is not very large. It could be about 12 to 15 persons. But it could be multinational crews. The owners of the ship, you don't know. They could be multinationals, come from different countries. So if something were to happen to that ship, the question have always been, how do you adjudicate that dispute? So it became customary for HO that the ship itself has to have a nationality, so that even if it is on international waters, it is the jurisdiction of the country whose flag it flies that will apply to everything that happens to the ship. You understand where I'm going? So the whole issue of ship registry. So a ship can register in any country that is a sovereign country. To the extent that that ship is registered in that sovereign country, that country now is responsible to ensure that all the laws that are laid out in the International Maritime Organization and other international organizations, they are the regulator to ensure that that ship is in compliance, right? Now, where does Liberia come in? Somewhere in 1948, the United States, as a result of a military compact with Liberia, the United States built the Freeport of Monrovia. And the young U.S. Secretary of State, a guy called Edward Stettinius, flew into Monrovia to dedicate the port.
Mhm.
And he met with Tubman after staying in Monrovia. If you're familiar with U.S. Or State Department and diplomats, when they go in somewhere or they have to do with something, they will make sure they get properly informed about the place, the people, and everything.
Yep.
So by the time Stettinius meets Tubman, tete-a-tete, you know what he tells Tubman? He tells Tubman something that we all have been saying all along. He said, Mr. President, he said, for what this country is, in terms of its natural wealth, its small population, its access to water, green forest. He said, there's no way that Liberians should be poor. He said, so let me ask you to do something for Liberia. The president said, what? He said, give me a concession for one company that can allow me to bring all the investments that's possible to Liberia. So Tubman allowed him the concession for a company, they called it the Liberia Company. So research that. So Stettinius created the Liberia Company. Part of the Liberia Company efforts in Liberia, they brought in called R.L. Lutuli. This is a Texas guy, they call him the gospel businessman who created the yellow machines. The first set of yellow machines went to Liberia in 1951. That went to Africa. They arrived in somewhere in Sando called Bafo Bay. Then around Stettinius' time, the United States flags were mainly in Panama. So there were political upheaval in Panama. The president of Panama, Arelas, decided one of the provisions on international law is that if ships are registered under your flag, during the period of emergency and crisis, you have the right as a sovereign state to requisition those ships for emergency. You understand that? That's a critical law.
Mm-hmm.
If we got ships registering our flag, for example, we're at war, it was in our right to use some of those ships to ferry our people who are refugees. And instead of hanging on Zorotiza that went to Ghana and Nigeria and people were dying, and we had the right as a maritime country to use those ships that were in our flag, even though it's on the book. But the ship owners wouldn't like that.
Yep.
So the Panamanians, during the latter part of World War II, started to invoke that right because Panama declared neutrality. So the American ships that were flying Panama flag were free from attack from the German U-boats on the Atlantic. So the Americans are moving their cargo on the Panamanian flag because Panama is now at war with Germany, supporting their war effort. But the Panamanians say, but we ain't benefiting from it. So during the Sunday war crisis going on, we want to use some of these ships to take care of some of our national issues. The American ship owners didn't like that. So they initiated or they facilitated the forceful removal of the president. He went to visit, I think, Cuba or somewhere, Venezuela, and there was a coup d'etat behind him. But in the months that followed, the military were benevolent. They allowed him to come back to Panama and run in the elections that they set up, and he won. So the tenors were going to Liberia, Arelas were becoming president again of Panama, and the American ship owners were wary and afraid that, this guy who's screwed, when he become president, he will probably undermine the entire registry. So one of the first things Stettinius did for Liberia was he told Tubman, say, look, we want to open a maritime registry for you, Liberian registry. Remember now, the maritime registry is a regulator. It's a government institution. It's not a business. Their job are to enforce the rules on the vessels that are flying their flag. So Tubman said, but we don't know that kind of stuff. Right? The guy said, don't worry about it. Give us proxy state authority. We will run the whole thing as though we are the government of Liberia. So they set up the Liberian Maritime Program. The initial agent were called the International Registry Incorporated. Let me tell you what will blow your mind. The laws they passed, because those are concessions, the legislature has to approve it. At that time, the U.S. Congress also has to approve it. When the maritime law came to Congress in 1948, some of the U.S. congressmen opposed it. They say it was too one-sided against Liberia. Can you imagine? We have already endorsed that thing in Morel.
Mm-hmm. It ain't,
When
yeah.
it came to Washington, the guy said this thing too one-sided against Liberia. So how do they benefit? If you collect all the money and you have an office in Reston, all your other global offices are in Berlin, are in London, are in other places. The people you hire are all far Europeans. So the Congress made it a condition to approve that maritime law that the money that is collected has to transit in Liberia. So they made them to include the creation of a bank,
To the National Trust.
the International Trust Company,
Mm-hmm.
the ITC Bank. So at least the money will be at least theoretically paid through ITC Bank. And from a financial standpoint, assuming it gives the opportunity for the to strengthen the financial base of the country because
Yeah.
of that money supply that is based there. So that was one thing that Statinas did. But why does a country want to register her flag in Liberia?
It's a flag convenient.
Right? So I prepared something here that will help. The ownership of global fleet in the world. There's a table on ownership. Today, majority of the owners are Asians, the people who actually own the ship.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a difference between those who own the ship
Mm-hmm.
and the country under which the ship is
Right.
registered. Just to clarify that, we in Liberia, we don't own any ship.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we don't own any ship. But we are the second largest registry. When Statinas set up the registry at that time, 1948, all their ships from Panama was taken to Liberia. So we became the number one registry in the world. Right? So if you look at this table, apart from the region, Asia, then Europe,
Mm-hmm.
and if you look at Africa, the number of ships that Africa owns is 26.
Mm-hmm.
You see the small green there in the cycle, you can hardly see it. But it's not that they don't own smaller ships, but the ships they're counting here are ships that are above 500 deadweight ton. So the small and Tina Maria, it doesn't count, right? It doesn't count. So Greece is the largest owner of vessels, Greek citizens. Traditionally from the Greek civilization, they've been into the shipping business. They've been holding that title for a long time. The Japanese, I know eventually the Chinese might take over. The Germans, Singapore, South Korea, United States, and Norway, and then those are the major owners of vessels. So if you go to Norway, you got a ship financing bank there. You got the classification society. Those critical things that has to do with the business of shipping is among these countries who are the owners.
Mm-hmm.
We are just the registry. So I will move the next table to the current table of the registry. So the class, the registry based on is the capacity that is in your registry. You see what a Panama is 350 million deadweight ton. Deadweight ton is actually the carrying capacity of the ship. So they could say gross ton, but deadweight ton, there's small variation. But that's to tell you that even though the Americans screw Panama since 1948, they still maintain a small fleet. Before we end this, I will tell you why Liberia, before she was first, why she has become now the second. It has been that way since 2000. So let me welcome Gabriel, and then I continue my crash course. Gabriel, welcome to Election Central.
Thank you guys for having me.
Good. So we're running the quick pre-show on maritime. I will just continue from where we are, right? I was asking the question, why even though we in Liberia and Panama and Marshall Island do not own ships, why are these ships registered under our flag? The answer is simple. The largest cost for operating a vessel is the bunker, the fuel that it burns. other than the initial capital cost of buying and all that. The largest operating cost is the bunker. Next to that is the crew cost, the people who work on board the vessel. And if you look in the Western countries, their labor laws are such that incomes are high, benefits, retirement are all high and significant. So what do you need for a crew to carry a vessel? All you need is a trained, qualified, and licensed crew. And the license for those crews are universal. They're regulated by the International Maritime Organization. So they go to the same quality of schools. They get trained on the same kind of equipment. They get qualified to work on those particular equipment. So there's not a difference between the licenses relevant to nationality. So the country of Panama decided to say, look, I will take a niche in the maritime industry. They opened thousands of maritime schools and started training the relevant crews. So they started offering the crews to the world at prices of 10% of what the European crew would cost, a highly competent crew. But the Western countries, because of the lucrative nature of those jobs on their ships, they make it a law that only their citizens can work on their ships. So you cannot put a foreigner to work on an American vessel. You cannot put a non-German to work on a German vessel or a Greek vessel. So think about it. Their competition now hires a Filipino crew. They're trading in the same route, so the money they're receiving per container is the same. But their competition can reduce her operating costs by hiring a Filipino crew captain that he paying $100,000, while he keeping the American crew that he paying $1 million. The only way he can reduce his crew costs is to go into country like Liberia that does not require any crew you want to hire, you can hire them. So the American guy takes his ship from the American flag, which has a lot of advantages, because if his ship were in trouble, the U.S. Navy will come and help him.
Yeah.
But in spite of that, he said, I will move my ship to the open registry. That's how they call them. So the Western countries that maintain their citizens on their ship are the closed registries.
Yeah.
The open registry countries are like Panama, Liberia. You carry your ship in that registry, you can now hire a qualified Filipino crew for little or nothing. So that is the big thing that drives it. But it's not to say that those ships are not safe, because there are regulations that there's something called post-state control, that you can check that ship at any port and that ship will be detained if it doesn't meet up with the basic safety requirements. So it's not a question of safety, So there are times that the impression is left that because these ships are in Liberian registry or Panama registry, they are not safe. No, that is not true. They call them the flag of convenience, basically because of that. Because these countries that flag the ship flyer, they don't have economy big enough to own these ships. So the ITU, the International Federation of Workers in Geneva, are opposed to open registry because it takes away jobs from Westerners. Because if you go to the open registry, you can go get a crew from Philippines or some poor Eastern European country that is qualified for low cost. So the campaign against that open registry, hence the name flag of convenience, right? But come back to Liberia. So when the Americans moved their vessels into the Liberian registry and managed it, that was the only animal in that configuration in the world. That was the only ship registry that was not a country.
Yeah.
It was like the ship owners were regulating themselves, right? So when the war came and there was uncertainty in Liberia in the latter part of the 90s, the ship registry, like any business people, decided to mitigate their risk. They went to the Marshall Islands, the Liberian registry. They went to the Marshall Islands and sold the same goods that Stettino sold to Tottenham in 1948. They said, guess what? We can open a registry for you. And they got the Marshall Islands to agree. So they started to shift the Liberian ships, some of it to the Marshall Islands, because they were talking in the U.S. Congress. They're going after Charles Taylor to close the registry and all that. So they started to prepare for the possible eventuality. So they moved a significant number of the ships. So by 2000, a big a dispute started between Bernard Uris Maritime Affairs and the IRI. Even went to court. They claimed that the Liberia rightfully claimed that these guys were using Liberia's asset. When I say Liberia asset, all the offices that the ship registry has, even though they are manning it, but they are legally Liberia's assets. Even though Liberians are now hired an insignificant number. So the argument was that you guys using our assets and then you're managing a competitive registry. Well, eventually that led to a breakup in the relationship, and the Liberian government opened a new registry made out of some of the same guys from RRI called it LISCA. But because of that dispute, the Liberian flag, the number of vessels literally split in half. So if you look at that table, you'll see it's Panama, Liberia, and the Marshall Islands. So the Marshall Islands now has about 290 million deadweight ton, Liberia 350 million deadweight ton. If you put those two together, Liberia is the first again, right?
Yeah.
So it was because of that breakout that Panama came up. But the difference between 350 million deadweight ton and 335 is about 15 million deadweight ton. If you look at, and I'm saying this to say that that's to give you an idea of why when somebody say that Liberia has moved or position to number one, it's not likely within this short time, right? The last report from the United Nations Convention on Trade and Development, that's the main organization that handles these trade issues that got to do with maritime affairs. These are the data up to January 2020, November 2022. So that's about 8 months roundabout, right? For Liberia to surpass Panama, Liberia will have to gain more than 15 million deadweight ton, while Panama gains nothing. Now, suffice to say that Liberia is progressing faster than Panama. The Panama registry is more or less stagnant. But what does 15 million deadweight ton translate to? If you look at this vessel, it's called a Hunter Fryer. It's a product tanker. It's in the category called VLCC, very large crude carrier. These are huge, humongous vessels. I mean, most of that vessel is under the water. They're probably about 12 story. That's why I move crude oil around the world. Now, this vessel, if you look at the class information there, it says that the vessel's deadweight ton is about 300,000 is 299,995. So you will need for Liberia to have surpassed Panama from November to today. You will need to have registered about 100 of those vessels in the Liberian registry, while Panama ain't registered nothing in the last 8 months. Now, all the data and all the major sources do not corroborate that claim that the guys were making. But I think they're making the case as though when they say you register one vessel in your maritime registry, it's a big deal. By 2000, affiliated with the Liberian government, the Liberian maritime intake was about $34 million on the average. Right now, the Liberian government will be lucky to get $15 million a year. And I'm saying that to say at some point, I know we're running into our main show, but at some point we have to realize that this maritime registry is actually a regulatory role. It's not a business. It's not a business. This is a low-hanging fruit. We have focused on this and we have negated the actual business of shipping, which we are in a position to do. If you ask yourself, those 4,000 plus vessels that fly the Liberian flag, how many Liberians work on it? You'll be surprised. There are more than 24 offices of the agent, LISCA, around the world. How many Liberians work there? Highly much Liberian work there. You probably won't get 10 Liberians. So the maritime office that sits in Monrovia is just about a shadow of itself. Just sit there, wait for the annual fees to come. but there are many opportunities. I will give you one quick one before we jump into our main show. For example, the same logic that says that this vessel is Liberian territory
Mhm.
and we are her regulator, that same logic allows us to regulate everything about that vessel. So, for example, a cruise ship, if it's flying the Liberian flag, we're supposed to license telecommunication on that ship. That means, well, we might not have the capacity to say, look, all you ships that fly a Liberian flag, Leteco will give you the service. But we can give them the license to get the service. It's called spectrum licensing. So right now, the ships that fly our flag they are using unlicensed spectrum, which is a major problem in the maritime sector, but because of our neglect. So all we need to do, we'll come up with a regulation at the end of the year and say, guess what? Come January 1st, 2024, vessels flying Liberian flag above 500 deadweight ton, you have to pay $10,000 a year for your spectrum licensing fee. I don't have a calculator. Sooner you order. Let's say we got 4,950 vessels flying our flag. Each paying us $10,000 a year just for that lesson fee that we are printing and stamping.
A
How much?
lot of money. A
How
lot of
much?
money, man. 10,000 times
49 million.
4,000. A lot of money, my brother.
It's 49 million.
40 million bucks, man.
Easy money.
Over 40 million.
Yeah.
We're talking about easy money. And there are the whole lot of different other areas that you can think about from a commercial purposes standpoint, that because these vessels are already captured, they are already in our regulation. Those who are regulating the industry, they have knowledge. We get take easy money from the top and start struggling. Okay, I tell you what. I think that little bit that little bit too much for well getting paid. So let's move to the main show, right?
Well, that feeds into the main show because that's innovation. We didn't tap into the innovation aspect of it. The Parliament did. They provided all the training institutions themselves. Things that we should have done. Innovate by researching and putting some effort into it. We're just lazy.
We're just sitting there and waiting for the fee. But guess what? To the credit of the current group, the National Maritime School now is at least putting up some courses, and in partnership with the Regional Maritime Academy in Ghana, they are pushing up Liberians now who are getting engineering degrees and going for their license. Just this week, these Liberians got their degrees in various professional fields from the Regional Maritime Academy in Ghana. Some marine engineers, some pilots, and they're going to get the different train for different licensing. I hope they can put them on ships. I mean, this is a good start. But in the big scheme of things, the way ships are crewed, they are crewed by nationality. That means you have to train every position. And there's a reason for that, because I mean there were accidents before that the result of that accident, the mitigations were not fast enough because there were multinational crew who could not communicate in the blink. You know, if you got local crew there, when Liberian men say shit, you already know, you already know. Hey, if you want to close a vada or bringing water in, you probably will be able to respond to it, but somebody will be wondering, but what are you guys talking about, right? So there's a culture to create to hire and put on vessels national crews who have some culture and social background that will be able to respond much easier to say about, hey, we'll give them the kudos. That's a good start for these young guys. I hope they can get them working.
But real quickly, my assumption is that the maritime school in Masha has been operating for a while, right? And so that's the first thing. The second thing is that, as you just said, the focus is on having national crews on these vessels. And then the third thing will be Liberia actually putting policies into place to say if you fly our flags, give our citizens a priority to be hired. So, will we have enough? If that is the case, will we have enough trained Liberians?
So we have Liberians who can train them over time, because we're not going to be making that demand like today. You make a good point. If the licensing, as I said earlier, for the different categories of work on the vessels are universal, they're given by the IMO. So by the time you get those licenses, you are recognized to work in that capacity in a vessel, right?
Yep.
So the program has to be designed in such a way that we are facing crews. So if you need advanced study to be a pilot, we can send you to the Great Lakes Maritime Academy in Traverse City. We can send another guy to Marine or engineering school somewhere. But we know that it is that pair that we are matching.
Yeah.
At the end of their training, we pair them as a crew and we offer them. Why do we have an advantage? We're not in any position to ask the ship owner for fees that are higher than the Philippines. We're not Americans. So we are also competitive. The only reason why we are not on those vessels is because we are not preparing our people to do those jobs. Okay, if we are preparing our people to do those jobs and we have a crew, we have an advantage already because we already have the ship owner in the room with us. They're flying our flag. We can close that gap, yes. Just to add on that, Alfonso.
But Sarah, quick question. But do you think we're in a position to at least enforce the spectrum licensing? Because I don't think there's really much, we have to do on that to enforce it.
No, we can enforce it. All we have to do is to instruct the registry, because the registry is our government. They are our proxy. We just instruct them that as a result of government policy, beginning this time, all vessels flying our flag would be expected to pay this.
Because that's $40 million we're leaving on the table.
The only risk you will consider, and mind you, in my experience, is that they are not receiving these spectrum licenses, so they are also ridiculed. Those who are the ships are flying our flag as though they are flaunting international communication union regulations. So they will be happy to do that. They will be happy to do that, and that the only thing could be probably maybe the fees to determine whether it should be 5,000 or 10,000 or whatever. But
or a big ship, $10,000 small money. All you do just get Uncle Sam, just say, look, this is what we're doing, and let them have it.
Interestingly, I in 2018, I'm working in Liberia. I wrote entire policy paper on spectrum licensing and handed it to my friend who was the head of the LTA, Alvin Brown. He invited me there. He sat his commissioner down after they've gone through it, and I explained to them. And they seemed to have bought it, that they were going to collaborate with the maritime. And when Jim Scully was stay there and get it done, and over time, I didn't hear about it anymore.
But are we sure that the fees are not being collected? And
that's a great question.
Well, the fees are not being collected because the issue of Liberian flagships not having spectrum license is still on the table in the international maritime circle, right?
Okay.
But it is likely, I'm not accusing somebody, that having gotten that policy paper, who knows? They probably went to another level and they work around something. But
that is definitely a question. Maybe, hey man, instead of you paying $10,000 for the spectrum fee, check your $3,000 and we'll waive it, and you keep moving.
It's a typical Liberian thing. This is cash. This is cash on the table that we can get. Yeah.
Wow.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, that was our pre-show. We jump out of the studio for a minute. We'll come back and start. Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome again to Election Central. Today we're going to be discussing, as I earlier stated, Liberian participation in the private sector. And to do that, I have with me my co-host, Afansu, and then we have panelists today with us, Sonny Yuma, Michael Rini, and Gabriel Carter, and they all bring a relevant competence and qualification to this discussion. So what I'm going to do, I will just let each person make a quick run, just tell the audience about yourself. So we'll start with Sonny.
Thank you, Mr. Gray. Again, I'm Sonny Garvin Newman. I work with GDP Capital Advisors. It's a private equity firm based here in the DC area. My background is in investment, and our current focus is we invest and do development, real estate development across the U.S. Um, I have been a professor, assistant professor at the University of Liberia for a while, and an adjunct faculty at Metro State University in the state of Minnesota as well. So, in short, we're trying to help to see how we can bring some insights to the discussions and see how maybe our policy leaders can take heed and do some things about the issue of our economy and the participation of Liberians in the economy. Thank you.
And also a member of the board at EcoBank.
EcoBank, yeah, sat the board for 7 years. Yes. Yeah.
Okay, Gabriel.
Yeah, nice to meet you all. My name is Gabriel Carter. I work in banking as a portfolio manager, and been in banking for about 8 years. And I'm glad to be on here. Look forward to having a good discussion in terms of, talking about some of the challenges in Liberia and being able to offer some kind of input to that. Thank you.
Welcome, Gabriel. Michael.
All right, thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here. I live in Minnesota. My background is in data and analytics. I have a consulting firm. I'm also an entrepreneur. I have businesses in the U.S. here, the Caribbean, and Liberia. And my wife and I, we do some nonprofit work. We have our own foundation. And I serve on the board of directors for the Liberian Business Association in Diaspora. So it's a pleasure to be here and lend my voice to see how we can all contribute to developing our country.
Thank you, Michael. And just so to make a disclaimer, I chased Michael down and asked him to come here, but he's not here speaking as in the capacity of the Business Association. We're tapping into his knowledge about business and those things that are relevant about business in Liberia. So you guys are welcome. The context that we're going to be dealing with is basically public policy as the agent that drives local participation in business. And I accept one of you disagree. There's hardly any country where wealth is created in middle class and amongst the people without the local participation in business. And our own country is no example. If you look at our history, we've every time I hear people talk about Liberia, they talk as though that nothing has worked before. But prior to the war, you had big companies in Liberia. You had the Maserati group of companies, for example, that had fish fillet, Maserati shrimps in supermarkets in New York, in Paris, in Tokyo. And as of the last report, they declared a net income in 1979 of $49 million. They were listed on the New York Stock Exchange. They had 26 fishing trawlers. The next company to them, owned by Chapman Logan, had 20 fishing trawlers. So we're small, but there were big businesses going on. So to give an idea, before we get to Liberia, what it is today, and why we are where we are, and what we can project for the future, I moved right close to our neighboring country, and we're trying to do a research on the participation of Ivorians in their business. I tried several of them, but it was difficult to get information just like it's Liberia. So I took Ivory Coast and just selected 5 Ivorian businesses and the business leaders to give us context. So let's take a few minutes and run through that, and then we'll come to our own story. Chien Kako Diego. This guy is an Ivorian business executive. He has never worked in government. If you see that, say he was born in Abidjan in Cote d'Ivoire, had a BA in economics, University of Abidjan, just like University of Liberia, where a whole lot of our guys got BAs in accounting and economics. And he founded this group. It's an insurance and banking company.
Mm-hmm.
It's got a new Inter-Africa insurance company. They're into banking and insurance. I mean, their total trade balance is something like 6 billion. Net banking income last year was $117.1 million. This is a pure Ivorian company. Fancy a lot. I'm sticking again though.
Oh,
So number three, Jean-Marie Akan. You heard about the bank BICICI in Ivory Coast
Mm-hmm.
and CIPRA.
Mm-hmm.
He is a founder of CIPRA. It's called the Association of Animal Production, but they are into poultry. So
Huh.
in Ivory Coast, you cannot import frozen chicken.
Mm.
But it's not a monopoly. These guys are the leaders in the industry, but there are many other chicken producing firms. So they have their own lockdown there. Founded in 1976, they got about 1,000 employees. They have their own corn plantation,
Mm-hmm.
their own feed factories, breeding flocks, hatchery, boiler and layer hens, slaughterhouse. This sounds to me more like Sange Farm
Mm-hmm.
in the days before the war, a part of the Maserado group. Because at that time they were supplying eggs to almost all of West Africa, the Liberian company. They own their own distribution network for all their products. One of the things that probably will come out again is I think these guys have a population of well over 30 million. So
Mm-hmm.
that's a
Yep.
factor. But considering that we are all part of a common market, I don't know. I don't think there's that much restriction to innovation if you want to pursue it. But that's Jean-Marie Akkad. He's both the head of BICICI and CIPRA. No government job. you, uh, okay, and this guy is Jean-Louis Bellon. Jean-Louis Bellon is, I don't know whether he's still in that position, but he was a foreign Minister of Trade, Crafts, and SMEs. Look at the nomenclature. Why would they specifically say SMEs?
Mm-hmm. There's a reason. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Small business.
Yeah. Small medium enterprises.
Yep.
There's a reason. There's an emphasis. There's a policy emphasis.
I was
And,
listening.
and
I was listening to a recording with Samuel Tour. We probably will run it. And when they were asking about the issue about Liberian not being spectator, at some point he was saying, "Oh, a lot of people even want a ministry that will be specifically delegated to Liberian business, but I don't support that.
no.
I don't know whether this is specifically a foreign citizen business, but it's an agency that is ensuring the viability of small and medium enterprise. I think it's a great idea.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
an engine of growth. It's an engine of employment everywhere in the world, not specific to the nationalities, but to make sure the economic growth through the SMEs. The greatest employers in the US are SMEs.
if
The
you check
largest.
all these guys, they got good education though. These guys have master in business law at the University of Montpellier, degree from the Institute of Higher National Defense Studies, master in international business management from the University of Florida. He began his career working in Wisconsin as sales manager for Greg's Cocoa. Member of the Ivorian Civil Society initiated to help the country to emerge from the Civil War. He launched a campaign across Europe and emerging countries. For example, was a meeting at the MEDEC in Paris in 2008 where he was asking for the return of French investors in Ivory Coast. I don't know of late any kind of road trip and trade fair that our people have been having to attract people into the industries in our country. We just sit and
Since 2007, we have one with Elling. We have one in DC. That was it. We haven't had any.
yeah. So he Minister of Trade, but he was also former board chair of UBA. You see the business acumen. Then Gerard Magua, founder. This is what even interested me more because there's huge opportunity for this kind of work in Liberia. This guy, he runs a major pharmaceutical in Ivory Coast, and the model is basically the pharmacists are shareholders in the corporation,
Mm.
right? So you got about 3,800 pharmacist shareholders. So they source the medication or produce it from local producer, and then they push them out to those pharmacists as outlets,
Mhm.
and they manage the entire supply chain.
Yeah.
I mean, these guys are recording about $1 billion in sales in 2020. And they're not only in the Ivory Coast, they're in France, and there's several other 14 locations in Africa and 4 in France, overseas department and territories. So they do wholesale, distribution, logistics, farmer depot, and then they do health promotion. Altogether, a group of 38 companies, but it's Ivorian owned. So it's almost like a cooperative in a way.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
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 I mean, the guys playing with modern ideas.
Yeah. Something that we started in Liberia, but we after the war we discarded almost everything. We started the whole idea of cooperatives.
Yeah,
In our
the
region.
Matthias Korogo is one of the older and revered business leaders there. He's into oil and gas. Basically, he has the third largest number of filling stations in the Ivory Coast. So in the fuel, gasoline, and lubricants, basically. But issue of payment cards, so you can buy your gas using Orange Money, MTN, or Wirecard, and their stations are all over Ivory Coast, and they're open and operational 24 hours. Market value 320 million. Right next door, we can even take bus and go there and learn some stuff.
Absolutely.
Then Didier Drogba. I mean, you all know Didier.
Yeah.
Well, so Didier played football. His net worth is 94 million, but he came back. He invested in gold mine. He invested in real estate, construction, fishing business. He has his foundation, and then he uses his brand to go around and promote inter-African trade. So before we get into the discussion, I took a clip from one of Didier's interviews, some 10 minutes. If you got the patience, let's run in and listen to what he says.
Well, thank you for having me here today, and thank you. It's a real honor for me to be here with you, and when I look at the faces here, I see people coming from different places, different continents, different cities, different countries, and I love that because I believe that I am a citizen of the world. I left my country when I was 6 years old, and from Ivory Coast or Côte d'Ivoire. I don't know which one you know. It's the same country, but I left Ivory Coast when I was 6 years old to go to France, and I lived with my uncle, who was a professional football player. But I didn't go to France to play football. I went to France to study. My parents sent me to France to study, and it happened that I became later on a football player, but that was not the plan. So what do? Do I sit down? We continue like this, or?
You do whatever you want. This is your house.
Okay. Oh, nice to meet you guys. Bye-bye. What? No, I'll keep it. Yeah, I went to France and to study because my parents couldn't afford for me to stay there, and also it was a chance for me to go abroad and learn and go to school and become what was called before a good guy or a doctor or I don't know, like any kind of jobs, but not a football player. And actually, I was really good at school. I was good at school until no, I was good at school. I was good at school. It just happened that at age 11 I started playing with a football team, and I did well. And then it became my dream to be a professional football player. I saw one player that played not far from here called Diego Maradona, and he became Do you understand what I'm saying? Okay. He became my hero. I was so obsessed with his qualities and the way he was playing, and with the way the crowd was standing for him. And then I said, this is the job. This is what I want to do when I grow up. I want to inspire people. I want people to be happy when they see me scoring goals, when they see me playing. So that's how everything started. So at age 11, I started playing, and then I had the chance to go to an academy. It's called Clairefontaine. It's an academy where they take all the best players from the French regions to perform them and to make sure that they become the best of the best. So from this center came out Thierry Henry, Zinedine Zidane, Marcel Desailly, all the big names. And for me, at age 13, it was a big chance for me to go there. And then my uncle called my dad. I'm gonna take Didier to the center. He's been one of the guys. He's been chosen, and my dad said no. He had to go to school and study. I sent him there to study, not to play football. Because remember, at the time, football was not a job. It was not considered like a proper job, because the contracts were different, the money was not the same, and you get an injury, it's over, and then what do you do later? So to keep my parents happy, I decided to really focus on school and being good, very good. So he's going to be happy, my dad is going to be happy, and still have the chance to play my football. So that's what I did until I signed professional, actually. And I was really, really happy to sign professional. And I'm saying that because leaving Ivory Coast to go to France, struggling a little bit because my dad was not happy for me with me playing football, I challenged him a little bit. But I listened to him until the end. I decided that he's right. You never know. If you want to play football, like I've seen it. Like many people, many players want to become professional, but only one or two are making it. So you need to have other solutions to give yourself different tools. So if you don't succeed in football, you can do something else, still in the football industry or elsewhere. So that's what I did, and here I am today with you guys, and it's a real pleasure to share my story with you. There's a lot of things to say, but I would like you to ask me some questions. I think it's going to be easy. Otherwise, I'll spend hours and hours and hours telling you my stories, and yeah, sometimes it can be boring. Merci. Reste avec moi. So I'm going to answer in English so everybody can understand. Because the first thing you said is, I want to thank you first of all, because you said that you recognize and you know everything I'm doing for. Wait. You recognize everything I'm doing, I'm trying to do on the continent for the youth, and it's this helped me to. It helps me to do more. So I will do more for you guys. I will always do more for you guys, because I've been you. You know, and I had to fight to find my way. You know, and I had to work twice harder than others, because I was coming from this continent, and I went to school and I experienced racism. You know, and don't be sad, because I believe people act like that because they don't know you. They don't know your continent. They don't know where you're from. So you have to show them. You have to be proud and say, no, you know, yeah, we used to walk barefoot, but now we have shoes. And you know what? I invite you to my country. We've got buildings. You know, when you're freezing like this in Europe, come to our place. Suntan. Yeah? Come to our continent. Come to our country. See our food. Quality food. You know? Be proud of your country. Don't be sad. Show them the good way, the good things about your country. You know? And it's your turn now to inspire the next generation. You don't have to wait to be 40 something or 60. No, you can do it now. Now you have an amazing platform to show your friends and tell them, hey, you know what? Come to my country. I invite you. I want to show you my country. You will love it. You know, I went to Ivory Coast with some friends, and they were so scared. They were like, we have to sleep next to the airport because the country is, there's a red flag on the country. So if something happens, we need to be close to the airport so we can take the first flight and go back to. I'm like, you come into my country, you know. Come with me. You stay at my place, and I will take care of your security. And after 2 days, we're going back after 5 days. They called me. They say, Didi, we want to stay. I don't want to leave. And they start crying. So, you know, be proud of your country. Promote your country. And that's what tourism is about. And that's what we are doing here today.
Well, let me leave it on that so we can share some comments. Didier Drogba, yeah, I mean the man is a brand. He uses a brand to promote African images. You know, it's when I'm in Liberia, I affiliate with everybody. Yeah, if I Sony official from the Alpha old timers, so we go there to play, and we got all our former professional stars there. I don't get a sense that they are using their fame to inspire anybody. I mean, look at Didier.
Yeah. I mean, that is true. I would like to take it to the policy perspective a little bit and ask these gentlemen of with backgrounds in business and entrepreneurship, etc., to kind of give us a little bit about your perception of the Liberian business climate and why that's so, maybe briefly.
Okay, but I mean, as you do it, with the backdrop of the Ivory Coast, you
Yeah,
know,
yeah,
what is different? You know,
Yep.
what is it they're doing that we are not doing? So I mean, hey, it's an open slate. You want to take it, take it.
Anybody wants to jump in? It's fine.
Sure. I lived in Ivory Coast for about 10 months, almost a year, back in 1990 during the war. When the war came, my family, we went to Ivory Coast and we were in a village about 10 months to a year. And I learned some French because I was very young then, so I forgot a lot of it. Uh, but there are things that I noticed, in Ivory Coast at the time. Aquila Village was still a village. It was like outside of the main part of town. So we had to walk past the military barracks and then go through Rivera for going to Cocody and stuff like that. But at that time there were systems. You could tell you couldn't just come here and build something the way you want. You had to get approval. Things were structured. There were education systems. The people were getting educated. I think the challenge we have in Liberia is that we don't have proper leadership in terms of strategy and putting the commitment of having a concerted effort towards implementing new rules or policies that will help our businesses. We have a lot of things on paper that are laws, but they're not implemented correctly. They're not put together in a way that is part of a broader strategy that Liberia can count on tomorrow to say, hey, we understand that, hey, this is how our education plays a role in providing workplace capacity for future employers that will come to Liberia. How the electrical grid plays a role in giving businesses lower cost of operating. How a bunch of things. Everything plays a role, even healthcare. All those things. We haven't come together and really have a strategy. And because of that, everybody's just winging it and everybody's just doing what they want. And I think it's not just, and we talk about innovation as well. There's no innovation. There's simple ways we can solve problems in Liberia, and none of those things are being used. Our leaders are just coming in and waiting for handing down from European countries or America to carry on policies or even fix the roads. We don't manage our national budget correctly. It's a lot of things going on in Liberia that's just so upside down that I believe the first place Liberia needs to start to get on the road for development is to start managing our own national budget correctly. Because if we can't manage that correctly, nothing else is going to happen. If we allocate funds towards education, that money should go towards education, healthcare, should go to different sectors. We should cut down our wage bill. There's so many things. I don't want to take up all the time talking, but there's so many to do. So
Yeah, I will. Maybe I can jump in here. Similar to you, Michael, I spent 7 years in the Ivory Coast when I was a child. When we escaped the war. I was just back. I consider it my second home in Africa, even though I lived in Ghana as well. But I consider because that's what I spent most of my time out of Liberia. I was there last year, 2022 January, and I just went back because I haven't been back for so long since I left. And when I was a kid in Ivory Coast, what I noticed is that the Ivorians are very competitive people. At the time, we thought they were aggressive, but that aggressiveness is channeled into competition. They're very aggressive people. I spent 2 weeks in Ivory Coast last year. There's the hotel we stayed in, 24 hours electricity. And this is something, it wasn't any kind of fancy hotel. This is something like regular guys like you and myself own, right? 24 hours electricity. They have, they're very nationalistic too. So if you go in Ghana, there's Uber, right? But if you go in the Ivory Coast, they have what we call Yango. Yango is their version of Uber. So it's driven by the Ivorian. You can stay in front of your house, you usher in a ride, they can take you anywhere. They have, when we talk about tourism, they have this national forest smack in the middle of Abidjan that anybody from West African country, you pay less money to go in to go tour it. They have an agriculture university in the middle of that forest with animals, right? So Ivory Coast, when we talk about innovation, they are light years ahead of it. They're very intentional. The same way Ivory Coast is, gotten to where they've gotten, Sierra Leone is getting to the same place too. And they're right next door to us, right? 2021, I drove from Corway straight to Freetown because I wanted to experience that whole. And this is not a bashing of us. I think we are not, we have, like you mentioned, we have the laws on the books, but we don't have the people who are intentional of carrying these things out. I drove from Corway to Waterside, which is you go through Bummy and you go through, what's the other county? There's two counties. Kema, yes. You go through Bummy, you go through Kema. There are certain places. I heard right now it's been paved. I actually want to go back and drive that road again since it's been paved. There are certain places where you have to park your car on the side of the road. You have to pull over so the other car can go by. That's how narrow the place become, right? And further down that place, I think it's in Bummy. We have that palm oil company there. Like we drove there and I saw, yeah, I saw the. I said, wait, these guys have these giant trucks coming here taking oil from here to the city, but they are not even trying to fix the road. That you can't speed on that road because some how the potholes were, right? We drove from there.
We don't require them to do it.
Right. We got to Waterside. You can see, and this is why I usually tell Liberian when you go to Liberia, forget the partying or whatever you go there to do. Drive in a just if you drive in the central Monrovia, just get out of your car and walk around. Or if you go anywhere, walk around. At Waterside, you can see the difference. The economic activity was happening on the Sierra Leone side, while the Liberian side would just straggle us. People just crossing borders going to the Sierra Leone side. From Waterside to Freetown, you can do 80 miles per hour on a highway, pave, tolls. And the thing is, we had 100 years ahead of these people. Like when they compared to these guys, we're grandparents, right? So for me, I think you mentioned that too. It's the leadership and the intentionality, and on all of us too. This is an indictment on all of us. We have to be aggressive in terms of how we want to do things in our country. We can't just relegate everything we want to do to the government. I think it's incumbent upon us to do that as well. Ghana, the Ivory Coast, the Sierra Leone, these are people, citizens like you and I, who are doing things. Some of these guys we just mentioned, these are average citizens. Yes, the government needs to create an environment, but they are taking risk, and some of those risks is paying off. Yes, we can put the indictment on the government, but I think part of that actually has to fall on us too. So I will leave it on that for now. Thank you.
Yeah. Let me just piggyback on what you said. Right. It's not that we want to fault the government, but its environment and the cultural when it comes to how we govern.
Yes.
Or is the case. We can say we're self-read. So we're 100 years ahead, but we're self-read. Most of the 100 years we're self-read. Yeah. So it became a real issue for us. But our founding fathers did some good things. And unfortunately for us, we went ahead and said, let's just undo everything that was done after our founding fathers. Mm-hmm. And then we brought in that civil conflict and created the problem. Now going forward, after the civil conflict, we have a semblance of humanity. What can we then do? I was fortunate enough to have done some work from international NGOs for the government of Liberia. I served as the director through UNDP for the National Capacity Development Unit at the Ministry of Planning. And we developed the National Capacity Strategy, wherein we're determining when to be done when it comes to human capacity as well as soft capacity that we needed in place to get things done. And it's through that institution that we did some of the things that we put in place when it comes to laws, the PFM laws, the Internal Audit Bureau, all of those things, whether it be through that initiative, we achieved a lot of different things. What we did, the document is on the shelf now. But here's our problem. Our problem lies in the fact that we will not give people who know how to do things the opportunity to do those things. We molded the water. Yep. I spent almost 10 years in Liberia. 2008, I sacrificed a lot. I went back 10 years in Liberia. My objective was not to be, yes, I was there with them, but not to be in government, figurehead type government. Because I was part of the ruling party. I was Deputy Secretary General for Finance, and I had the opportunity to be a minister, but I refused. I said I would stay at the university. I became a dean for the grad school. I would impart knowledge, and I would do consultancy.
Yeah.
And I'll give you a story. One of the consultancy that I performed, that I carried out, were with the Liberian Water and Sewer Corporation to the African Development Bank. And I went in there. They had an 18 months project. And I went in there and we did an initial evaluation. What I saw was that the government of Liberia were waiting on grant for $40 million to do rehab for wet plains. When I did the numbers, the old numbers were producing, before the war, just Moravian environment, were producing 150 million gallons of water per day.
Prior to the war.
Prior to the war.
Yeah.
So after the war, we had some leakages here. Let's assume we're producing 75 million gallons of water per day. Do the math, or just 1 cent per gallon.
Mm.
It meant then that you could model that and you could attract an investor who could put in almost $100 million and revamp the wet plains and do all your distribution lines and everything. I didn't say it by mouth. I proposed it, and I even found the investor, Universal Water from UK, to do that. The government not investing a dime, but the government will own 70% of the concession, and the guy will just own 30% of the concessions. To this day, that concession is dead.
On the shelf.
On the shelf. They just killed it. Even after they just killed it completely. So tell me, in Africa Coast, I'll give it to Ghana. I joined with a Ghanaian, we bought 1,800 acres of land in Pram. We said this land we buy, for us to develop it, we need a revenue base. So we told the government, we got 800 acres we allocating, we can build you 15,000 homes for your civil servants, your army, and everything. Give us an offtake agreement. The government did. They gave us an offtake agreement. That offtake agreement empower us to then go and say, let's develop revenue base. Let's go now engage investor to raise the money to do the little city we want to build and the 15,000 units for the government. We can't do it in Liberia. The first of the post I see my back with the guy.
Yeah.
That is our real problem.
Yeah.
So you must have the ideas, the know-how.
Yeah.
If the government comes in today and we move in there and we begin to propose and proffer some of these ideas, it's not just the ideas, it's the ability to network, to be able to generate the ideas and bring in people to bring in the money. They will still look at you differently. Sarah is a living witness with the airport situation. We built that nonsense we call airport. The initial idea was to build a hub with ETI, Air Arabia, to use as a hub for the whole Africa. We still have that dream. We still have that picture and everything, the model, financial model, the design. We still have it sitting there. The Our Africa. We're going to connect and marshal to Haber and open it up.
Paul Kagame took that idea now.
I said 2 years in Dubai for that project, they almost killed me. When they awarded all that project and the governments, they don't anything came out, she said, no. Then she took that $50 million from European Union and said the good Chinese, they'll build a Chinese nonsense.
Wow.
So I mean, I guess laying out the foundation because you have to live it.
Yeah.
The largest bank in Liberia, I serve as the credit chair. All the money above 200,000, if I don't approve it, nobody get money. I know the situation with Liberian borrowers versus the Fulani borrowers versus the Lebanese borrowers versus the Indian borrowers. I know the situation. So it's deeper.
We'll talk off air, but that's an interest of mine, the banking sector. That's
so. I want to lay that premise as we will discuss these policy issues going forward. If a government comes in that will listen, that is asserted as intentional, like you said, or Gabriel, then
we were Gabriel intentional.
Yeah. So
you have people who are highly capable who can really move. First thing, who can actually lay down concepts, workable concepts, and get it off the ground. I mean, we with these discussions, we need to dig deep. It's a political problem that we have.
It's a combination. Culture is embedded. It's cultural and political is embedded. And to change that, you need a crew, a whole team. You can't do it with the single leader. Because that leader can be swarmed with all the old wines, the old guys around, the same guys, the young one hustle, doing all kinds of things. You can't change that way. So you need a crew.
I think you can do it with a single leader, though. I think a leader with the right mindset and authority can impact change in Liberia.
So two areas, guys. As I listen to you, a lot of you talk about infrastructure. You talk about roads. You talk about electricity. You talk about availability of these things as the drivers of social development. So, what do you see as the problem policy wise in Liberia that's keeping these things behind? I know some of you, Sonny, you talk about, government, three of you basically talk about government being intentional and not, but not being intentional actually. Um, so there's the one part of it. I mean, what do you see as the stumbling block policy wise? And then two, as I also saw Didier Drogba, I saw him not doing it through government, but through a private enterprise. So isn't that also another avenue that can be pursued without necessarily relying on government?
But
Let
if
me
I
come
would
in.
add to that,
Yeah.
Alfonso, the government has to create the enabling environment,
I
right?
totally agree. Yes, I totally
Let me.
agree.
Yeah.
But let's say
Yeah.
James Deba, for example, and I'm using him because he was a soccer player like Drogba, decides to form a foundation or whatever and go around and start educating young people about entrepreneurship and business, I'm not sure the government is going to get in the street and stop him. So I agree, government has to definitely create an environment for many things, but also I also do believe, um, and prove me wrong, that that's a place for individuals to take initiatives without necessarily relying on government, being able to overcome the hurdles that government might have in place.
I mean, you're right. Look, don't get it wrong. The Liberians are doing a lot of good things there. Connex, Adal Shari, his business is almost $1 billion business now. Into the point where in he expanded Sierra Leone, he had taken over the whole all total distribution network. He runs it now. He a cow factory where they get the cow something. He built a modern one, 10 farms. So Adai is doing it very well.
You know,
Futa,
you got a mini cement factory and
Jaffa,
a refinery,
yeah,
what do you call modular refinery, right?
yeah. I worked with him and we did something with a private equity firm from Ghana that put some money into those deals, into the deals. I got Liberians are doing a lot. They got a few one, another guy called King that at the airport building the different things for the airport there, doing some things. You got Liberians are making inroads.
Mhm.
But for us to really make the kind of inroad we need,
Yeah.
we need a government that when they say policy initiative, policy stance, the government is intentional about it. Okay, you can't say I put the policy in place just to satisfy international norms, and then when it comes to be substantively implemented, I bypass it and yet keep it informed. We did it with the PFM law. We did it with the anti-money laundering, the anti-corruption law. We put it in form, not in substance. That is our problem. For those of us who sacrificed that 10 years or so in Liberia and we came back, our kids, everybody pays off for us. What do we have to show? That's a legacy issue for us.
Yeah.
So that's it's not a lot of things I did in Liberia, investment from the investment side. I employed while in Liberia, at least I kept 10 to 20% on my payroll. Things I was doing from consultancy side. Yeah, I did. Then I got almost another 20 students on in scholarship university. Just from my side. I was not in government, doing government thing. So you got people that doing other things, but if that environment we have is not an environment that allow innovation to move on, that allow you that got knowledge to say, let me help, let me be part. I go to the National Investment Commission, you provide ideas. They don't look at it. They want that immediacy. They want something to just happen. It's just not possible. That is our problem. We discuss other initiatives when it comes to innovation, other things to talk about. Like you said, Didier is a brand equity. Is a brand equity. The thing that carried him, that propelled him to that level, he even abandoned it in his own terms office as a leader. No soccer program. no academy, nothing. What makes Ghana different? What makes Africa different when it comes to soccer? You got soccer academies all over.
All over. Yeah.
You came as a president. You came. You prepare you to power. You can't even build a single academy, or you can't encourage other people and just invest into academy. Do it as a private initiative. You haven't done that.
Sports Park.
You're a legend. It's not a question. You are a legend in that field.
That's something, yeah.
Yeah, best Sports Park on the Effie.
So that intentionality is something we can take away. That assertiveness, we can take it away. If our government, look, in the past, the government did some good things before when they even came to power. If you look at the program at the Agricultural Bank, they have a small seed fund that was for entrepreneurs that spurred growth in the SME sector. You can go back there. So we did it before.
Yep.
It's after the war now. These pretenders called leaders, leaders that coming in and saying they can do this. The young ones. So that's what we are.
You make a significant point, and that's where I wanted to take us to, because in preparation for this, I also read about Korea and other countries. For instance, when Park took over in Korea, they were very intentional. They identified areas of growth and development that the country both had resources in and that could spur development, and they put money into those sectors. Yeah. And once you establish a business, first they provided credit, to people who were involved in businesses that were in areas that were identified. They provided them sufficient money. You can go and get credit. Then it gave them some exceptions. For example, if you're in that business, let's say agriculture, and you're importing agricultural materials into the country, you are exempted from paying tariffs on them, so that so more people were able to go into those sectors. And eventually that's how. So again, it's about, as you are saying, it's about putting the policies into place that identify key areas of growth and development, pouring money into those sectors, and encouraging citizens to get involved into that sector. So I totally agree with you. Government is almost always the driver of these big, bold ideas and development initiatives. You talk about the agriculture bank, which that had program in place for farmers, cooperatives to go and get money, to undertake agriculture, which should have been a priority area for us and those kinds of things. My question is, do we have such a program? For example, what the agriculture bank is, the agriculture bank still functioning, and do we have programs of credit available for specific sectors of the economy currently?
Someone can go, but the bank doesn't exist. It's just there in name, but there's nothing going on. All the banks that we are as a country, the National Housing Development Bank, Housing Bank, the Agricultural Bank, they are all deformed. They just existing on paper, and sitting somewhere with the central bank, but they're not operational. But I want to give other panelists a chance, and then I will dwell on some of those issues.
But real quickly, you talk about working in a bank and presiding over credit.
Yeah. Okay.
Is there any public program? Was that a public program or a private bank?
The Agricultural Bank program was a public program that Doden initiated, that was very much instrumental in propelling a lot of different small businesses, and that even cooperatives were doing very well. That led LPNC to be very, very vibrant at the time. The bank itself as a board, Echo Bank, is a Pan-African bank. That bank should have, it began in Liberia. They came to Liberia, they came to Do. They wanted to build the whole ETI, they call it Echo Bank Transnational. They wanted to build, they wanted to start from Liberia. And then Do started acting funny. So they took it to Lomé, Togo, and they started in Togo. Today, that bank is about $20 billion, and in terms of reach, across Africa is the largest. In Liberia, it's the largest bank in terms of almost $1 billion with assets under management. On our board, we initiated a program with the USAID. USAID was so concerned with agriculture that USAID put up $100 million into agriculture for Liberia, a grant for 5 years. That money been spent stupidly, I don't even know where it's going. But it has some money there that wouldn't be serving as a guarantee. So if you came in and you wanted to borrow, USAID would guarantee almost 100% of what you were borrowing. It was in the agricultural sector. No one utilized that. The banks themselves didn't even want to touch it. because the bank had to underwrite the loan to allow it to be used.
Yeah.
You know why? Because again, we're not intentional. Father, but no one knew about the opportunity. Not many people knew about the opportunity. Government did not even champion it. That's the situation. The African Development Bank brought in money and put it to LBDR for small businesses. Well, they started with just small money, $4-5 million. The same process. You send it through the banks, the bank underwrite, African Development Bank with at least 50%, they will, they will guarantee it. That thing was not spread out. People that doing click change, passing to people relatives and people doing small things here and there. So
Jesus.
again, being sincere, being intentional. So it was not possible. The place we had opportunity with agriculture was with the concessions that we had. We had 2 significant concessions, but we did it wrongly that killed us. When you take Simon Darby and gave a concession and you're giving him almost 200,000 acres, what you do, allocate 10% of that 200,000 acres, 20,000 acres, and gave it to local people and ask Simon Darby to provide farming implements and so forth. And then they buy the science to do for our people way back. And they buy from the people. You give them techniques, you find everything. Those who were being part of that Simon Darby thing, they will ensure that Simon Darby succeed.
Yeah.
They didn't do that. It seemed to a golden variant. If you had done the same thing with them, they would allocate 400,000 acres, 10%, give it to smallholder, 100 acres, 200 acres. They produce and they sell to this company. That's how you generate. The next thing you have done in the concession was when you build concessions, there are derived demands around the concessions. So what you do, you integrate development in those concessions areas. If we had 1,000 acres, we can take up investors ourselves. We don't need government, and we can develop a small business district, a commercial business district within that enclave. We provide housing, we got small schools, we get all the things, hotels. It become a thing that draw people over to the concession area.
All ecosystem.
Yeah. So you don't need government to do that, but all government providing for you is the avenue. Government is assertive and intentional and sincere about doing that because they know exactly what happens. So if you don't have to have a government who just don't care, they are rent seeker, they're just seeking rent. What do? Look at Grand Bassa County, Buchanan. You got LAC, 2 big companies, LAC and how you call the other one? Asomita. Hey man, Alfonso, tell me, man. If you allocate 2,000 acres in the Buchanan area, you can develop a small modern city, just a CBD. And the concessions will boom because of those big, large companies there already. You could expand the port. You can produce enough megawatt energies without government input. That is the situation. And so we're seeing the same thing. The country in Africa, I know they are Ivorians. The government, they can do the stuff, but the government is intentional about making sure the citizens are empowered and they're at the backbone of the economy. In Ghana, the same way. When they had a small factory district, manufacturing something, they made sure the citizens are in. Look, you can talk about Ghana, anything you want to talk about Ghana. Most of the road projects that they in Ghana, they get small concessions to small private Ghanaians, who then took it and brought in larger investors and partnered with them that have money flow to them. So that's the problem we have. Nobody say government should allocate things to all free. Nobody say when you get concession, the 15% you got, you keep it, and you fully invest in, you will give up 5% free. No. Create the enabling environment that will allow me, I can bring my private capital outside and I can take a stake. EcoBank by the mandate, 30% of EcoBank ownership should be Liberians. That thing been hanging for the last 20 years. Now a single Liberian taking 30%. How much you need for that thing? $2 million, you get it. A profitable bank.
It's still available?
It's there. But you know why it can't happen? The guys out there will not do it because they can't take it for the people. They will not let you.
So
I want to go. I will beg the people. I had an idea that I would take my private equity firm. I will come on the side, get my small license. I will take the 30% share, and then my private equity firm will be doing syndication. I will syndicate government deals. I will go bring the big money, use the bank, allocate capital, and do some things.
You
know what I mean? Stupid. Not gonna give it to you.
So they won't allow. They didn't allow you to do that either.
No. But to get a license, it's a problem.
So Mr. Rennie, you say you do business in Liberia, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So what's your experience? What type of business you're involved in Liberia? What's your experience with all of the policy restrictions that we're talking about?
Well, I initially when I joined the Liberian Business Association back in 2016, 2015, then I started going Liberia 2016. A lot of what Mr. Newman is talking about, you come up with ideas and you try to implement. So my background is in technology. I came in looking at lots of ways to bring in technology to help automate some of the government processes and streamline things to make things simpler, faster. All those ideas you bring, they're shut down. And even some ideas where you come in and say, hey, don't give me any money.
Yeah.
I built this, and then I will figure a way to make money off of the service fees coming from these solutions. They still shut those things down. I do business also in the Caribbean, specifically the Dominican Republic, Haiti, and those two countries are on the island, and of course they don't get along, but there's a history there. But the Dominican Republic is very intentional about what they do. They have resources available for foreign investors, and a lot of the investors there are North Americans from the United States and Canada. The real estate industry there is booming. They have laws, they have funding in the banks. All the banks, as if you're an American, you carry your tax returns, you buy a property. Simple. There is no question. You carry your tax returns, you prove that you're American resident or citizen, you got your green card or you got your citizenship. You go there, you can buy properties, and the properties are low cost, and they generate over $10 billion a year in tourism. Americans go to the hotels, Americans buy properties. Americans live there and work, live there and work remote. A lot, especially since pandemic, a lot of people working remote, they've moved there and work from there. They import, they import a lot of electronics because they don't manufacture a lot of those. But when it comes to food, they eat a lot of rice and beans. So, I had this brilliant idea. I was going to start exporting beans to Dominican Republic. When I went to check, the tariff on imported beans is so high that the local produced beans it is way more cheaper, that it just doesn't make sense to import beans. But they pump money, loans into the farmers. They ask for investors to put money.
Yeah.
In the courts, if you're going to sign a contract with a local farmer to invest in his farm, the courts will enforce that law. All Dominicans know that if you sign a contract with a lawyer present, that is legally binding, and they will enforce it, include taking your property from you. So my partner, he does film and movies and stuff like that. So he's in the process of doing a film in the Dominican Republic, and he got a $20,000 grant from the government. He didn't have to know anybody. He just had to put his proposal together, submit it to the office, and that money was approved. No, he didn't. Imagine being an American, you don't speak Spanish. You just go, you hear about this funding that's available to American investors that are doing movie, because they're trying to encourage Americans to come and produce film in the Dominican Republic. So he just went and wrote his proposal, drop it off to the lawyers, drop it off to the office. It's approved. No question. So those are the things that need to happen. You can't say you want improvement. Let's take, for example, the Liberian, when we had the automobile industry here, prices here. When the gas prices were going up and our automobile industry, our companies were failing, what did the American government do? They put money into these organizations for them to develop the capacity to compete with the Japanese companies to produce low emission or low fuel consuming vehicles. You have to do that if you want to maintain your own industries. We cannot say Liberian businesses don't have the know-how. Give them the money and the resources to get the know-how to serve. You cannot continue to bring foreign companies in to handle every problem, or else we won't build capacity. Our businesses will not be able to maintain the airport. Our businesses will not be able to maintain the port. Our businesses will not be able to maintain local logistics to supply things. We talked about, one of the things Mr. Nima talked about also was agricultural bank, farming, stuff like that. If you go right now and you open a farm and you produce a chicken, right, and you want to export it, good luck out of the port. That is another hassle. So all these things, there's no way we are going to move forward if we don't learn to make things easy for people to do business. That is the problem we have. So just capping it off, I feel like all of this comes down to our culture, because a lot of what we're talking about here, Mr. Newman made a statement that if you're a Liberian who know how to do something and you go and make a proposal, they're not going to give it to you. I've experienced that as well, and I know a lot of people who've experienced that. And I'm not going to say government per se because it's happening in a lot of previous governments, so it's not this administration specifically. It's happening. All the governments have done it. I think it comes down to our culture, and if we are going to change, we have to start at the grassroots, changing the mindset of our people, because those same people that are walking around the streets of Liberia today are the same people who are going to be in government offices tomorrow. And until we can start changing those mindsets and making them understand that, hey, it's important to not sit down and envy somebody else or feel like you must get all the credit. Because in America here, if you're a boss, you're managing a team, a project team, that team does well, you get the praise.
Yeah.
So you're not going to be envious if you have a star employee on your team who knows a lot of stuff, and you say, oh, you're going to push that person to get more done because that's leading to your promotion. Liberia is the other way around. If a star employee is on your team, the first thing that comes to mind is this person trying to take my job.
Yeah.
So,
okay, guys, we're going halfway in the program, a little over halfway. I wanted us to ease it up a little bit, then we'll go to specific policies in Liberia designed to create exclusivity for Liberian businesses. I wanted us to look at it and then look at the logic of it. I know we've been talking about business environment from a general perspective after having bring in the guys from Ivory Coast, but there are some specific laws. There's 16 areas of business that are set aside in our investment code for Liberians. I would like us to look at it. Let's look at the logic of it, and see whether it works or it does not work. But I will first. There's a question thrown to the Minister of Finance 2 weeks ago on that very question. I want us to listen to him.
Based on what you've done with the fiscal issues in the country. Now, this president on the 22nd of January in 2018 promised the Liberian people that they would not be spectators in the own economy. Minister Twer, the reason why Ghana, Nigeria, other places are traveling, because the citizens are in charge of their economy. What has been your advice from a fiscal perspective with reference to having this, Liberianization policy fully implemented? Why is it taking long, to have it done?
Liberians will not be spectators in their own economy, in Ghana, in Ivory Coast, because the structural foundations that were laid in those countries enable their citizens to participate more fully. The president inherited a structural deficit. If you start there and write a law and say these constraints will pull Liberian businesses.
Oh, why?
And that's why we are solving those constraints. So when you come to I was just talking to the Liberian Secretary General about Liberian business issues.
Okay.
We talked about it. And it's good that we talked about it before I came on the show. She came to see me for the inauguration. So let's talk about Liberian business. Okay, we have a business law and we're planning a forum to bring all the business people together. The basic challenge Liberian businesses face is that they need access to finance, for example. Yes. Meaning they got banks that will give them money. Banks are not giving them money because banks saying when you give the money to get it back, if they don't pay the problem.
We've had this conversation over and over, Minister Twer. Now the thing is, do you have to blame it on structural issues for Liberians to be given the chance to sell flour by kilos?
No.
Because they keep struggling with the importers to do simple things like retailing, and you government sit down.
Yes, the complaint we've heard is that they call something called fronting.
Okay.
The law protects certain businesses for Liberians.
Sure.
All right. The same Liberians go and front for the foreigners.
You are the regulator.
Okay, hold on, yeah. So, if you went to the business, the name on the business is a Liberian, but all the business transactions are not in the Liberian name. They are complaining to us about that. So we say, look, as long as you have this situation, I don't care what kind of framework you put. What we need to do is a local regulation to say, maybe change the law. Instead of the law we want to propose or the regulation is that when the business that is protected by law for Liberians, when a Liberian person name is on that account, on that business account, then that Liberian person name will also be on the bank account. So you need regulation to show that if the foreigner have an account in EcoBank, The Liberian that mean we got evidence that the Liberian managing the account, that we're not there right now. That's a structural weakness. So we pass a law and say protect Liberians today, but the same Liberians go and work with the people and they doing the business. When the auditor go there and say, no, this is a Liberian business, Liberian people covering up. The way to stop Liberian people from covering up is to then go and say, look, okay, if you show that this person is this business is for Liberian, I want to see the Liberian managing the money, and that's the conversation we're having now. That the conversation, there's a forum coming up, one bring all the Liberian businesses together and say, how do we enforce?
The president made a statement in 2018, and you are having a conversation in 2023.
Yeah.
Why the time interval?
Because you gotta look at the structure. You know, we gave proper loans. You know, we gave some loans. Not much. Country is challenged, rules, everything. You're looking for money to give the business people. But what you're finding is that if you giving loan may not be the thing, because you need to remove these barriers, and it takes some time to understand that this is a problem for 171 years that we had in the country.
So you started giving loan without facing the structural problem.
Well, when you're dealing with the practical thing, you have to go into it. As you go, you learn, and then you see, oh, the real problem here is how do you protect Liberians in a way. And so there are some reactions. Some people from the international community say that is discriminatory. There are counter views as well. Say, you know, when the government tries to protect certain level, it looks like you're discriminatory. And if you want to discriminate, there's some of our money that is coming may be a problem because we don't want an economy that is discriminatory. We're also having that conversation.
So, Mr. I think we've passed that stage.
So it's balancing.
The fact that you have a law already on the books that protects certain businesses,
it should be protected.
Yeah. Now, what we ask should be the implementation model that we should be either making amendment to or enforcing.
That is
and this is the issue we're having with you now.
But
why has the government not been able to enforce all the Liberian local businesses? They continue to complain that they are not being protected. Lebanese men is selling, Indian men is selling to Gaflen, slip up by retail down water side. Mr. Troy can go down water side and see an Indian man serving as cashier.
That's right.
Behind the store, as a store boy. These things are visible. You know them. Everybody knows them. So why has the government not been able to address the issue?
The government is understanding. It's the same situation like a black market.
Mr. 5 years?
No, hold on. The government is looking at changing the policy landscape. Now, you said 5 years here. All right. Why in year one? Why in year two? We didn't. Because you come to power, people have businesses. All the groups are working. You look at access to finance. You're solving the other constraints. You take some time to understand that this fronting problem it's the biggest elephant in the room, because that's where it has to do with human behavior. But
thank you, Sarah. Stop inundating us with that thing. It's annoying.
Why you say to that?
I gave up. He's just, and I think the young kids who were interviewing him did a very good job. He's planning a forum to discuss 6 years later. He's talking about access to finance. I don't know where he's even coming from with all of those things that.
What's the issue about fronting?
Because he's talking about fronting. What is front? How is fronting even significant in this whole thing? When the kid push in, then he run to we get loan, we get proper loan. How does that even relate? I mean, but let's give it to the experts and let them tell us.
When we first started going to Liberia, the Business Association, fronting is an issue in Liberia. On that, I will say the minister is right that fronting is an issue. A lot of Liberian businesses, at the time, I remember the vice president of the Liberian Business Association at the time was managing a company that made ice cream, which is one of the protected businesses in Liberia. But they have major competition from the Lebanese, who had ice cream shops all over the place. And because they had the money, they were able to set up, more luxurious establishments, that Liberians could take their families and kids, whereas the Liberian ice cream companies, were relegated to having no ice cream, cart walking around the street and selling. because they didn't have the resources.
Mr. Rennie, sorry, I'm not stopping you. I just want to add this so you can continue. So Lebanese people were also in ice cream business, and by law,
I ain't. They're not also.
Yeah.
Okay, they are.
Yeah.
How did you know that those companies were being run by Lebanese people?
You just have to walk in. You just
So
walk
it
in.
goes to
You see
enforcement,
Lebanese
right?
people- Exactly
So
what
it
you said,
goes
right?
to enforcement, correct?
Yes.
Correct.
If you can walk in and tell, why can't the government walk in and tell that this is a Lebanese man company? And that was
on the
question.
paper,
So
it's
yeah,
the Liberian who owns it.
yeah, but you walk. So how? But you were able to tell that
Yeah.
this business was being run by Lebanese men,
Yeah.
right?
That's
And
it, right?
I think it also takes us to a deeper problem. If on the paper the Liberian owns this company, who's paying the taxes? Whose names? What's the connection that the government is making between this owner and the business income and the taxes? Because
They're not enforcing the laws, man. That's all. They know
because
that.
you're able to establish that. So it's enforcement of the law. It's
The
not
enforcement,
financial,
true.
really.
The enforcement
Yeah.
is there, you know.
Yeah.
But those very Liberians will go to court because they're getting some kind of dividend from this, you know, fictitious investment that they have,
Mhm.
and they will go to court to stand there and say, "I am, you know, the rightful owner of this company," even though they're not able to show that they manage the money or anything like that, you know. But they will come and argue.
Michael, I think that's a great area that I probably would need to throw out to this.
Let me give you some insight.
Yeah.
Look, fronting happens everywhere, and fronting and
Absolutely.
money,
Yep.
fronting and money in Liberia is the least of our problem.
Yes.
And Simon said something that makes sense. There's structural deficit, which is true, part of the issues. What missing in Liberia is capacity buffer. Look, if we don't have some mechanism in place, some institution in place that can help build capacity, you can put all the money in, people will just quant the money. And the reason why you see fronting is that because of those 16 businesses, the people know Liberians know they have the right and they don't have money to start those businesses. They say, but let me just sell my right to somebody and get something going.
Which is a legitimate business too.
Yeah. It's a legitimate business. It's just that if we had the law being enforced, it can be done the best way. They can sell the rights and get some interest in the business, real interest in the business, and it's a Liberian business, and they can partner. It happens in Ghana, it happens in Nigeria, it happens
everywhere in the world. It happens everywhere in
you
the
don't
world.
have
It's
the capacity
partnership.
buffer.
That's why you bring to the table. Exactly.
We don't
And
anything
just
with
that-
capacity buffer. Institutionally, our businesses don't know how to maintain records. They're not ethical when it comes to taking loans and paying the poor money back. I can tell you one of the largest business in Liberia that owned by a Liberian. I will not call his name. The guy when I took over the board as a board member, the guy owed us 7.5 million, and we just dodging us going all up and borrowing money, taking money. We had to find a way to put screws around his business. All his sources of generating money, we put screws around it. By the time I left the bank, I think you're only owing 1.5 million. Can you imagine? The banks have to find lawyers.
He has the ability to pay, but he just don't have the will.
Yeah, you got to find trick and just save for the money into other places. What you're doing?
Yep.
We had to find lawyers, independent lawyers, and get their accounts to go chase Liberians to get them paid. The reason is that we lack capacity buffer. We need people. They don't know how to put records together. They're not trained into managing business. So it's not just money. It's just one aspect. Different thing. So if you put in other countries, they build those institutions so they can aid their citizens into doing business. Even if they will teach you how to go into partnership with foreign investors. It happens in Ghana. The hotels in Ghana, the Holiday Inn. The way I know about it, the guy was selling it for $90 million. You know, he partnered with an Italian guy and they built it, but he was like the face of it. They want downtown Accra, or how they call it one? How they call it that big something? Yeah. Look, I built it. It took them 3 years to recoup all the money.
And Tony and Mr. Nyema, and there are laws on the books in Ghana that support that, correct? Yes. That you can partner with foreigners. You just need to own a certain share as a citizen.
But China, I mean, how Chinese guys want it? The same thing. They design policy. You come and invest here. You're looking for low cost of labor. there's certain kind of Chinese interests that have to be involved in it. It's the public policy issue.
Yeah.
But there's a documentary. There's a documentary on that. How the Chinese guys siphon billions of dollars out of the U.S. based on that same trick.
Yep.
On that same thing.
So I
Billions
think
of dollars is
what
siphoned out of the
Liberia
US.
is missing is an incubator. Liberia,
That's what I'm trying to say. That's the capacity buffer you need.
we need to set up.
And then the institutions, LIBA, Chamber of Commerce, they serve different purposes. However, there should be some cooperation to get things done. They had to fight. They were fighting among themselves. When they were repealing those 16 businesses, at the time they were repealing them, they were fighting among themselves. So look at LIBA is said that only the website that you running, only the Diaspora website working. That's the simplest things. We don't want to do those things.
Absolutely.
How can we be
and that is the reason I think that has been my biggest qualm with this whole Liberianization policy, is that we set the business aside for Liberians to run, but we don't give them the
based on
tools.
what you've done with the fiscal issues in the country. Now, this president on the 22nd of January.
What is that?
Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. As I was saying, we put businesses aside for Liberian people to run, but we don't give them the tools. They don't have any financial literacy. They don't have any business management skills. Most of them don't know. Like you go into Liberia, you will see, let's say myself, are selling, slippers. Let's say example, slippers here.
Yeah.
Cyrus will be selling the same thing here.
Slipper.
Like we don't have that business competition acumen to say, hey, if Cyrus is selling the same thing, I should find something else to do. Even common things such as manage to read a common balance sheet. Most people in Liberia don't know how to do that. You can, for a small business owner, those are the basic things you need to do. What we call the 3 prongs of small businesses, right? The sales, operation, and the finances. If you can understand at least 2 of those out of those 3 prongs, you will be okay, right? But most of us in our country do not even know how to, compete in a simple business environment. Yet we put businesses aside, we put these sectors aside. We want to put Liberian in them to run them. And the biggest piece is people will continue to do that, because if you can't have access to that, you don't have the resources, and it's that those services are aside for you to do. You will front for it just to get whatever amount you can get, and that's, as you said, I think Michael said that all we have to do as well from the government side, go in foot to foot in those businesses and uncover those people that are fronting and make sure you enforce the law that's on the books. But again, as I said, the thing about us, we like titles, but we don't like to roll up our sleeves and work, right? We got people that are in power that you have people that can if people like Michael can go there and find out, hey, this business is not being run by a Liberian but a Lebanese. We're more about people in government who are paid by our taxpayer money to be able to do that. It just sometimes I relegate it to laziness and lack of, as I keep saying, of intentionality of wanting the same thing you have for yourself for the next person to have it. So I will say this quickly and I will end. There's this thing, I kind of blame it on maybe lack of empathy. Maybe the war brought that to us, because we were kind of tough for a long time period of 14 years where all I need to do is get up this morning, find what I got to eat, and that is it. So we lack empathy for the next person, and that has been ingrained in us for 14 years. So we care less about the next person, whether he gets food to eat or not. Imagine somebody in leadership position. You're paid to represent the people. You get up, you live in a great place. You drive by those people every day. You go to work. There got to be at some point in your life where that will hit you like, God, I cannot be the only person doing so well in this country. And these people that I'm paid by to protect, to make sure that their lives improve, are not doing the same thing. That is part of the problem. And that, for me, I know I'm going off a tangent here, that transfer into this whole Liberianization. That transfer into the whole Liberianization, where we have to, if you set something aside, if we realize that Liberian people don't pay back money, I think, like you guys said, incubator, put an incubator aside, start an incubator, start a financial literacy to teach people the reason why, if I give you money, the reason why you should be able to pay it. If I lend money to you, if I lend you $1, you pay me back that $1, I can take that $1 and lend it to Cyrus. When Cyrus pay it back, I can take that same $1 and lend it to Alfonso. It's the responsibility, the ethical part. but
Yeah,
we
yeah.
lack these basic
There
structures.
are good examples there.
So,
Colombo.
sorry, I wanted to call you guys' attention to something so we can get some context. Because
Yeah,
look, I work in Liberia,
yeah.
right? You got billions of dollars floating in Liberia from international organizations for consultancy, for implementing partners. Some there was a $5 million USAID project just to do monitoring and evaluation of certain projects. 99% of those projects go to foreigners, foreign firms, Ghanaian firms. Now, I listed up there the 16 areas of business that is reserved for Liberians that we're having all this noise about fronting for. Look at those business for real and tell me whether that's something that you require public policy to protect, where where there are more lucrative opportunities that we could design policy towards Liberians really acquiring wealth. I mean, selling sachet water. So in that case, the Lebanese guy can have the bottled water,
Yeah.
aqua, but he cannot sell the plastic bag water. So that plastic bag water is reserved for Liberia. Peddling the petty trade. The basic reason why they're building the
market balance. Yeah.
so that was exclusive for Liberia. That's what the law say. Then travel agency. Well, travel agency will make some sense, right? Then mechanic shop, auto shop, value anywhere under $550,000. That one I know is being flooded because I know Lebanese guy who been fixing car in Liberia. Sand mining. The Chinese are all their mining sand. This too is capital intensive because of all the construction work. So if they even protect that would be something that require investment in the yellow machine and all that. The Chinese men they're ahead of that one. Then what we got? Tire shop. Rice retailing to sell rice in cup. Shoe repair. Yeah. Block making. Taxi driver. A large portion of the Kenyan guys who in Monrovia don't even speak English. They come from across the border in Guinea.
Yeah.
The guy who ride the motorcycle and stuff. Used clothes import and used car import. Pray tell me, who really designed this stuff to say that the exclusivity they're giving for Liberian business is so miniature?
It's so insulting, so insignificant. This is not a driver of any economy at all, except for a few things over
but
there.
Those are the 16 things that Senator are talking about people fronting.
Yeah.
But let's put it in context, gentlemen. Some of these things, like let's take the issue of distribution on the trade front, the trade side. Colombo is another Liberian business organization. Those guys, like they work as a cooperative. They structure themselves, they put themselves together, and what they were doing, they were importing goods that they can sell. So they'll go and buy 5-6 container, and then they will pool the resources and they will get a container. And they were favorable to the banks. But the government did not protect these guys. And for that reason,
what was their risk?
Yeah.
What was the risk?
The risk is the risk was the same risk I applied to many of the Lebanese that do in the import business. That was the exposure. For them, they were vulnerable because when the Lebanese men noticed or the Indian men noticed that these guys were breaking things that were selling on the market, then the Indian guy would go and bring in mobility and flood the market. So government not protecting these guys.
So the government has to be deliberate in that situation. So you see that kind of sector is developing with Liberian participation. They should put some ring around it.
Take Simeco, take Blackberry factory, take Coca-Cola factory. The idea of distribution, not retailing, is that all the distribution network will be owned by Liberians. So for you to distribute cement in Liberia and sell it in from the wholesaler, from the factory to the wholesaler Liberians, the retailer Liberians, that's what it should be. The same way with beer factory, the wholesaler Liberians, the retailer Liberians. That's the supply chain. The Coca-Cola, the same thing that should be done. We're not enforcing it. So you got Lebanese doing wholesale. They took all apart. That wholesale
and retail.
Yeah, and in retail. So they're eating the guy's small margin that he's supposed to get from the retail side. They're eating all into the main margin. So that's where protection. These are insignificant, but there's some pieces there and here and there that are unique. That we're not putting that the travel agency is working correctly. The travel agency is being protected. They're working correctly. Nobody outside can do it. Even the big airlines can use these travel agency is a law, and it's working. So it can work. It has been proven that it can work. If we can't do these small ones,
those travel agents in Cinco area there that giving tickets like other airlines, so there's some they're not Liberian companies as well. Except
no. Like you got Air Morocco, you got an office there, but they are compared to give allotments to, and I got Liberian all the travel. I know them. They gave the allotments. They got allotments, so they can sell a ticket. They open the whole they got what we call a platform. That whole platform open to the travel agency. They can sell tickets in bulk themselves. So it's there. So the opportunity to give it to them, you can't just do it. You go to the travel agency, you buy a ticket. So the opportunity exists for them. They're working. That part is working. Yeah. So it could work. It's just like we say again, the whole issue of intentionality. And people saying, let be assertive and there's some unique opportunities here. If you model those things, the guy there in Africa, they form cooperatives. So if you form cooperatives around how you build up the capacity. If you form cooperatives around here, then the cooperative will provide all the capacity people need, the services that they provide in bulk, and you don't have to pay individually. You can do the services to the cooperative.
It'll be big enough and competitive.
That's the whole. So that ingenuity and innovation are what we need to allow. But for us to do those things, we got to have a government that is open-minded, that say, yes, let's help you innovate, bring a unique idea, let's support you, let's put them into effect. And that is our problem. The other countries, they are willing to know the importance of creating jobs. See, so yeah, it's this thing here, they're not significant, they are insignificant, but the opportunities are embedded in there. There are a lot of things here. Sorry, man, I want to go back and say, okay, I will go back in the community where I can buy 5 acres, 10 acres, 15 acres, and I can put 100 units here for $10,000 per property. Even you get giving 20% down, $1,000 or $2,000, and then I don't want a mortgage is. I can do the way I can do it. But what happened? The legal system for land will not support you. Somebody selling to you, selling to another person, selling to another person. How are you protected? Tell me, those are the issues there, real issues.
I think these are very significant businesses, because this is how a lot of Liberians earn their living. So the peddling, petty trade, most besides those who live outside of Monrovia and do agriculture mostly, most Liberians, this is how they earn a living because there's no jobs. So when it comes to identifying businesses that are serious, we know that most Liberians jump into business because there's no other option. Some of them are not serious business people. They're just trying to earn a living. So these things protect them to a certain extent. There are Lebanese people and Chinese people selling coal in Liberia.
Yeah.
That's how it is. And they have the resources to kick out the Liberians.
Yeah.
Selling jungle flare, selling blocks, sand. The Chinese, they got their sand mine. Their sand is better, better quality and cheaper. So most people go to them. They don't go to Liberians who used to shovel sand to the trucks from the beach anymore. So Liberians don't have the resources to buy the machines to mine the sand. Even the wood. All these things are very significant from the Liberian perspective. I just think when it comes to the true Liberian private sector, these things are there and Liberians earn their living. But when it comes to developing Liberian businesses, we have to go back to the laws. We have to go back to establishing an organization that, like LIBA, could be used, or the Chamber of Commerce, even the banks can have their incubators within the banks to identify customers that they can say, this customer looks like they have a serious business. Let's help them set up a business plan, educate them how to grow their business to the next level. These things can happen.
Yeah.
We got a beer factory.
Yeah.
The only company producing beer.
Mm-hmm.
I'm telling you from a personal experience, an investor wanted to open a competitor in Liberia. The Liberian government said only beer factory can produce beer in Liberia.
Yeah.
So how are you going to produce more jobs? You don't have to open that beer factory in Monrovia. You can go Buchanan and open the beer factory there. Depopulate Monrovia, spread things around. Take 2,000 acres in Buchanan. You got a port right there. Put an economic zone there that people can open factories or businesses there, and you can give them some kind of tax breaks if they can hire more Liberians. Those are the things that need to happen. But instead, most Liberians will continue to do this because that's the only way they can earn a living. And I'm happy that there's some kind of protection, even though it's not done correctly.
Yeah.
But there's some kind of protection protecting
Yeah.
them that they can at least do something for themselves because there's nothing else, no jobs.
So
If
basically,
we if
sorry,
we if
go
we
ahead.
agree that even though these sectors that are set aside for
Mm-hmm.
Liberian to start business in, they're not what we call
That's significant. Yeah, I would
the
say.
legitimate vehicle to wealth creation. However, because they need to make a living, most of them go into it. Even though some of them actually do front. Do we think, and this is a question that I always ask, do we think this stigmatization we put on Liberian, that Liberian people don't pay money back, is one of the things that kill us as well? Because if if we just listen, I always like to tell this thing to everybody. As smart as we are, anywhere you go in this country, anywhere you go in the world, there are smart people. I believe there are smart Liberians in Liberia who are very serious about going into these places, going into these sectors, starting companies. However, there's this big problem that I call capitalization within our banks of, I don't know if they're not undercapitalized or they just stuck with this stigma that we can't lend to these people because if we lend to them they can pay back their money. So most of them bootstrap their way into getting into these places. If you can bootstrap your way, you sell those services, you front for people to have the capital. And I think that's one of the biggest reasons, one of the things we have to look at in terms of how do we give people access to capital. Yes, if we do identify that there's actually, besides that stigmatization, that is actually a tendency to not pay money back. How do we solve that problem? How do we make sure? Like I think Michael, you said something like that. How can banks actually becomes incubators? Where they can incubate to make sure that they pick the right people that are able to start these businesses and be able to lend to them, because we'll continue to say here that hey, people go into these services, but they lack the resources. We ought to. I believe for me, I think the biggest challenge we have is the capitalization, the access to capital.
Yeah.
Yes, we take risk. Like most, even if we say most Liberian people don't pay money back, I'm in the banking sector. Listen, we give out loans. Some of those people don't pay back their loans, right? There's ways you can channels you can go to get those money back. We have to take risk on our own people in these sectors, whether it's just these sectors that are set aside or the other ones, in order for them to happen. It won't happen overnight, but we have to take risks with Liberian people. And for me, I believe this is something we have to do. From the banking side, something has to get done. We can't just have this non-performing loan crisis and we say, oh, because the loans are not performing, Liberian people are the only people who are not paying it back.
Yeah.
So I'll leave you right there.
Yeah, Gabriel. We have said it. Not all. We're not branching the brush. Not all Liberians. They got some unique situations where Liberians are doing business, are doing very well, are paying their money. We got programs. There are a lot of programs. There are some smaller programs that came from the international banks, and so that they got money on the side and they're lending money. They got some credit unions. They got small program that's coming out. The issue we just said, we always said it again, is that buffer, capacity buffer.
Yeah.
So if we build that buffer, that means don't put an incubator into the bank. No, not the bank. The bank won't take that cost, that extra cost. The bank won't kill themselves with it. But if you have an incubator, I know the bank are open to that opportunity. You have an incubator like Liba. Within Liba, we got a specialized unit that makes sure they monitor, they provide these services like the marketing, sales training, the different things, the accounting services and everything. They provide those services. Two, they provide the monitoring services that allow the bank, when you underwrite the loan, we from the Liba side will make sure that it is channeled through the right process, and we make sure that our people were guided to manage their money and pay you back. They're looking for those services. The banks are begging for institutions to do that. So a Liba is not just working with government money. The only thing government can do, just take us maybe a $5 million facility and put it to central bank.
Yeah.
So you can hold the facility. You provide some seed guarantees on some of the borrowing that they put down. But to make sure that government does not become a loser and don't abuse it, You got policy, you got safeguards in place that will not allow interfering from ministers, from people in the house, and people to use it, go get money and do that.
Family, right?
All of buff that capacity buffer can ensure that what government does is that, look, there's not in our government here in deciding how that money is honorating. The bank will honorate it based on the merit of the proposal.
Yeah.
And the Liba incubator will make sure that the people are trained and the service. That's how you do it. And don't leave it in the government ministry, government agency hands that they decide that. That's what things we gotta do. Those are the policy things that we gotta put in place and make sure they work. But the division in our institutions, I see Liba, they were individual driven. Just one person, when the person goes there, everything dead. Okay, Chima is doing well, but they I mean, you have to put
so basically, to sum up, to summarize, basically what you guys are saying is it's good to set some businesses aside for Liberians, but that's not enough.
Yeah,
you have to give them the resources to be able to invest in those things. If you don't do that, then they sell their rights and you have fronting. So you have to give them the resources, but you also have to provide the training.
Yeah.
Have to provide the training to them to make sure that they run their businesses successfully and they succeed, and they're able to pay back if they don't get any credit, which is the monitoring something that you just referred to. So you don't just give people the money, you monitor them to make sure that they're running the business the right way and they're able to pay back the loan later on. And I think you're correct. I mean, commercial businesses, part of what they do, I'm not a banker, but commercial banks, part of what they want is the one who gave our loans. The one who gave our loans. So
the money arrow, the money is in the arrow.
Exactly. So again, it takes us to the point that you guys made earlier, which is intentionality.
Yeah.
You have to be intentional about this. You have to reach out to the people. You have to spread the word that this money is available and we're here to help you.
Yeah.
You have to go to the communities, these small business people, and say, hey, this money is available. Randy, you talk about it.
Yeah.
The Dominican Republic, you learn about, this loan was available. Your friend went there, bam, got the $20,000. So the information has to be out there. And Sonny mentioned earlier there was money in the bank that was available, but people didn't know about it, so people didn't take advantage. So again, that takes us to.
Let me add something to what Mr. Newman was saying. Sometimes if you play ignorance to something, or if you decide not to be innovative enough, you lose out on a lot of opportunities.
Yeah.
There are thousands of Liberians doing the peddling business, or even the pimping guys, the keke guys. None of those businesses are reporting and paying taxes on anything.
No. And they're willing to. They are willing.
Imagine if the Liberian government put money aside to LIBA or LMA, the Liberian Marketing Association, or some of those localized institutions, and said, let's work with you to help establish some kind of incubator and microfinance opportunities for your members. But these members now, we have to bring them in and track what they're doing and then tax them. You know how much millions of dollars the Liberian government could generate in additional income? But because we're not doing that, we are losing millions of dollars. Millions not being paid in taxes. And those people I will tell you, Liberians are not lazy people.
No.
Liberians don't want to skip the line. But they do those things because they feel that's the only way opportunity will come their way. So if we start teaching them better habits and showing them that, hey, it doesn't matter who you are, you have opportunity, things will change.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Totally agree. Mr. Carter, did you want to come in? I thought I heard you trying to come in.
No. I think that was a good summary on Michael's end.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We have established some basic.
Okay. Oh.
Yeah. We established some basic. Right? Can you hear me?
We hear you, Sarah.
I think it was probably frozen. Did you?
You can hear me now, Alfonso?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're hearing you now. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, this has been a vibrant discussion. What are some of the takeaways? What as we go into this election year, the assumption is that you get a new set of team in January. From this thing, what should we be thinking about? What should we be advancing from a public policy perspective? I hear Gabriel making the case that that stigmatization that Liberians don't pay debt is a bad idea, because in every business, and I agree with you, in every business, that's the essence of capitalism. You are mitigating risk. So if you conclude that we can't get them put money because people say they can't pay debt, then you just cutting them completely off. It's
You're
not.
shooting yourself in the leg because your economy will not grow.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
so that's
So
one.
let
Find
me
a
come in with
framework.
this issue of the way forward with all these guys who run it. It's so defeating. It's so exhausting. First of all, these people running, and you haven't seen most of their platform. And whether they have platform, whether it's realistic or not, you don't even know. So if we can sit here and talk, I know we're watching these programs, and we talk all the good talk we want to talk. We're listening. We can capture some of the things that we're bringing in. Okay, I mean, make it realistic. To place it as part of my platform. Who can do that? How many people willing to do that? The
We
issues.
have heard, we have heard, we have heard Cummings. Cummings is coming out with at least some generalization that you want to liberalize the costs related to importation of commodities and all that.
All right. So there's one thing to just say you want to do it. There's another thing to say if you can really do it when you get in office. And then when you start that is by making sure before you get in office, you got a team in place that can fast track the initiation of those things into policy documents before you
And talk about the house.
the
Talk about the
house.
house.
The way you do the house is this. The house will pass what you feed to them. If you're sincere about what you feed to them, you're sincere about it, they have to pass it. The first few years, the house can be very open to initiate it because everybody hustling. They want the economy to boom. So they will be open to those ideas and things you want to do. But like we said, how do we put these things in the policy initiative? Even our concessions. If we review concessions, we need to integrate some of the things that we initiate, that will spark out the growth we need in the economy through the concessions. We're not doing those things. How do we ensure that happens? Infrastructure.
Let me ask one question real quickly to you all, and then you can continue. So I know that this one again. I like to go back to the private sector, and the role that we as citizens and the private sector institutions can play. So there's one role for government, which is policy and all of that, and there's also a role for private sector, which is advocating for those favorable policies for your area of focus. So we have the Chamber of Commerce, we have LIBA, the business community. What, and maybe, Mr. Rennie, maybe you better place since you work with the business community to answer this question. What, if anything, has the Chamber of Commerce of the Liberia business community done to influence these policies that we all believe are needed? Enforcement to ensure that there's no fronting, for example, making sure that resources are provided to members, and really recruiting new business people into the business community, into those portfolios. Have you guys done, or are you doing anything to influence policies around these things as we've been listening?
Well, the Liberian Business Association of Diaspora was established 2015, and we're not a subsidiary of the Liberian Business Association in Liberia. We just named the organization that way because we are Liberian business owners. And we did sign a memorandum of understanding with LIBA then, which at the time was the president of LIBA was current foreign minister D. Maxwell Kimaya. So our understanding was to work together to foster Liberian business interests. And we met with some government officials, in the early time, and we did meet with some government officials during the early stages of the President Leah time to kind of come up with some policies. I think the biggest challenge we faced, we came up with some diaspora plans, that will help the Liberian government take advantage of the financial power the diaspora has. But getting the implementation, even getting FaceTime with some of those government officials was difficult. When they come here, it's easy to meet with them. But when you go Liberia to get time, they're busy. You can't get time to have a conversation, let alone even start strategizing as to how you want to implement something. So, we've tried, but nothing goes anywhere. And because of that, we started focusing mostly on our members here in the U.S. We offer training, we offer equipment and microfinancing to our members here so that they can, because when the coronavirus came, one of the struggles we saw our members have was they couldn't get financing because their books weren't managed properly. So we started through the City of Brooklyn Center in Brooklyn Park. We got some funding to offer some laptop and QuickBooks training. We got a partnership with Chase Bank the branch here, they started coming in and helping our members understand how to properly prepare themselves and document their finances to qualify for funding, and what they can do with money. So those are the things we started focusing on here for our members here, because we are a diaspora organization. In as much as we want to have an impact in Liberia, we feel like our members being successful here, came first.
Absolutely. Well, real quickly before you comment, Mr. Nyama, because you've been in the banking sector, both of you, Carter and you, so I wanted to add this to it. One of the things you guys mentioned is that because of the lack of intentionality, some of these programs that existed in the bank, like for financing and stuff, people didn't know about it, especially you, so they didn't take advantage of those opportunities. Is there anything that prevents a commercial bank from going to the market woman, from going to the black maker, from going into the farmer and saying, look, we have these resources, we have these portfolios available, we can work with you if for you to get the loans to get these things available. Is there anything that prevents the bank from doing so?
No, no. Well, let me just correct some, just make a statement about the Chamber of Commerce. Know that the Chamber of Commerce represents all business interests across Liberia, irrespective of nationality. So when it comes to policy initiative, and they are very strong, very, very strong, they're pushing things at the general end. It's not just specifically to Liberian businesses, but to the general end. And I was a member of the chamber. My company was a member. I took part in leadership and also at the Chamber of Commerce. So at the chamber level, it's more general. But what we have said to Marco is this: some of the things you're doing here can be replicated in Liberia, like the initiative that you're carrying out. Man, what I would love to see you do is that make Liba feel that you are part of Liba itself. You can't work in isolation, because some of the things you want to carry out can be done through them, because they're on the ground. They can make sure that those things happen. And you just propose to them that they like those ideas. Even if you just took a small grant from here and open that incubator, and you're partnering. It's an MOU. You guys are partnering under the Liba umbrella, and you're carrying out that program. It can be implemented. Now to the banks, I know my bank, Echo Bank, they allocated $5 million just for small businesses, market women, small guys like importing things. We had that money aside for those things, and we gave, because it was a bold initiative. We said empower Liberians, so we begin to do that. We're giving money out. For the 7 years I spent it, the most of the money we gave out, about 80% was not paid back. We had to find a way to get it done. However, like we said, the key, what we learned from it from Echo Bank perspective was that we needed something like an incubator, some middleman man to do those work. Echo Bank is not in the business of going after smaller loans, and that's not the business they're into. So they're not going to put resources in there and doing that. So, but if you have a third party that can come in and do that, Echo Bank will work with you. Like they have the Liberian Banking Association. It's a powerful group, and they listen to this talk, and they want to do those things. Look at LBDR. What took LBDR down? It's the same behavior. Government took money from them. They can't pay. Government sent people to them to give money. They can't pay. That's what took LBDR down. And LBDR is not owned by Liberian government alone. You got foreign partners that got the money in there. So they eroded their whole balance sheet. The whole capital that they had, they eroded everything. How can they change that guy? Because Liberian has the largest portion of the check, the Liberian government, so they influenced the MD. They gave out Auckland loans, and now I kept and LBDR not made profit in the last 7 years, no profit. So there, and LBDR too have programs that came from African Development Bank, that came from ECOWAS Bank for International Bank. The money is small money, $5-6 million just for small businesses. But the implementation is an issue. And like I said, the key is that buffer. If we don't have that capacity buffer, we're not going anywhere. You see. So
yeah, if I may add, I think from the commercial bank's perspective, it's again is as we keep saying here, is the enforcement. So for every bank has a risk, what we call risk appetite, right? So they determine what kind of market they want to go after. Like Mr. Nyema said, right? Where Eco Bank, they don't want to be in the small business space. They want to go after the big, right? And the reporting from what we call the regulations from the central bank is not there. We talk about this whole thing of non-performing loan. That is an easy fix that can be done from the central bank's perspective, right? In terms of how you carry out enforcement, I will solve this in the banks in the United States here. If you're over 100 billion, right, you report to the OCC, right, Office of the Foreign Control. You report to the Federal Reserve and the FDIC, right? If you have a level of exposure to one industry, they will come in vehemently as a bank. They will tell you you have too much exposure to real estate. You either have to stop lending or you have to reduce the level of lending in there, because they understand that even though these banks are privately owned, that their failure will impact the economy, right? So they have a direct enforcement. They will come in. You get regulator every time you get regulator come in, right? They look at everything you do. They will come in and tell you whether you're going too far, whether you're too exposed to this industry, or how to reduce your exposure there. The central bank isn't doing that, right?
No, not true, Gabriel. They're doing it. No, they're doing it. They are very. I gave you experience. We had issue with, because of the same bar loans, we had to recapitalize. We had to bring in additional 30 million out to recapitalize because of central bank regulation. They want to put receiver in at the bank at the bank. They are very strong. Central bank. No, one of the strongest institutions we have in Liberia. I would say that.
Let me end answer the reason why I said they're not doing that. So if that was so, right, the non-performing loan crisis we're having shouldn't be involved. Do you know what's causing a non-performing loan problem? Right? So most of the banks in Liberia, because we have placed this stigmatization on Liberian people that they don't pay back loan, they target, because every bank has a risk appetite. They go after the Lebanese who have the money, and they go after the people within the government who works for the government who have money that can pay back. But you know what that does? So every bank now goes after those people. That's a small pie. And it's okay, because you have your risk appetite. You'll do what we do to keep you sustainable, right? The problem is when you do that, because everybody's going after that same pie, it causes what we call exposure. So when you go after a government employee, and as we often happen, government start paying, say, 3 months, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months to a year. Those people that you lend to heavily in the government, they start paying back their money. You have a bulk of non-performing loan on your balance sheet. Now, if
let me get to your point, Gabriel. The banking sector in Liberia don't even lend to the employees, government employees or employees. They don't even do that. It's not even 0.005% of their online book, bank and loan book. So the sector in Liberia, the sector in Liberia, you have the government sector is about 15% what the bank lend to. You got the international and NGOs, which is about 25%. The real money comes from the trade sector, where you got Lebanese in you, import, export. I got about 40%. So I just want to give you insight, because that's what we did. And the non-performing loans were 5 to 10%. Were 5 to 10%. And of their loan and coming down now. But what I'm just telling you is that you might not know. You gotta go in. They keep good records. Central bank keep good statistics. You gotta go to CBI. You see it. Good statistics. If I want to know the economy of Liberia, I go to CBI website. I will get the most recent statistics. So they're doing very well. When it comes to supervision, they're doing very well. When it comes to supervision, they're doing very well. The bank go see the sector. I just want to tell you that, so yes, you can see it. Government employee loan is the least 0.55%. Not even much in the.
Where does stigmatization come from, Sunny?
So I follow them.
Let me say one. They come from those Liberian businesses. Bulk of those Liberian businesses. Okay, I could call names here that had the opportunity that were considered in mid-size SMEs in the sector. Guys were doing like 10, 15 million a year. Those are large businesses that took money and then begin to play games and not pay. They're the ones who stigmatize it. It's not the smaller guys that get the small thing. They do macro loans. They do microfinance banks. That's what they do. They do the loan. So we get microfinance money and then they lend to those small guys. So there's not an issue with those guys. There's some, for instance, take this guy, Musa Ability, his company, that guy who operate in that sector, but who have bad behavior. take the guy, the old man.
You don't have to call names.
No,
We don't have to call names.
Yeah,
Please.
I want to give you
Right,
that businesses because you want to know
right.
now. Those who gave the Liberian put the bad name, that bigger businesses that operating in that same space that took good money from the banks and that don't want to pay. Not these small little guys who put their home on the line. No, not these small
But do
guys
you
who
see
put
the
their small
exposure
home.
problem?
Eh?
Do you see now? Do you see the exposure problem? What I'm saying? If you
Yeah,
only target people that you realize that because they're all big, you have for a bank, commercial bank, you have to diversify. But if you start lending to people only because you think there's this select group of people are only capable of
They're
paying
not
back
targeting
money,
people. They were business people who doing
right?
trade
That's what I'm
finance.
saying. You have to
They're not,
diversify.
yeah. You
We
Liberia
can
economy is
go on
small.
and off on that. For
The
me, I
productive
think
sector is
it's
small. It's a small productive sector. So you
right.
don't have it like you have in the US here. You got a pool of opportunities that you can lend to. No, you don't. Trade finance, some government institutional loans, NGOs, international NGOs advances, and it's concessions near their money. You got nothing else that you can say
And
innovatively
this is
that you can lend
why
to so that you
on
can
the
expand to. No,
this
that's
is
what
why
you
I want to
understand that.
this is why I want to get into banking in Liberia, but that's another topic. And I think for me, I think it's an underwriting problem that can be, can be the way we do banking in Liberia as a whole. It's you
It's
cannot
okay.
sustain, you cannot
Okay.
survive doing banking like that.
It's
And
okay.
I can go on and on and talk about it, right? The way we do our underwriting problem. Because if we have good underwriting that was regulated and effectively, they not yes, even every there will be non-performing loan problem, but the level to which we have it now, it won't be as big as it is. And I will say this one thing, and I will end. I know we have to wrap up and go, right? Like you said, everybody keeps saying we have structure in place. We have the SBA at the central bank. I mean, the Minister of Commerce, right? These are things they like. I know you talk a little. You alluded to some of that. Government can guarantee some of those businesses loans. Even if we're now putting this stigma on Liberian businesses, government can come in and say, okay, because this stigmatization exists, let's do some level, even if it's 50% guarantee to these businesses. Those capital, the 100 million you talk about, the 5 million you talk about, that can be done. That can be done to do that. But again, for me, I think the bigger problem is the enforcement, and I think it's also what we call capability, knowledge. People who wants to work, people who know what to do and who wants to work, who knows what they're doing. I believe we have a talent problem in terms of from the government perspective to enforcing that, and I think that's pretty much one of the biggest problems we have in our country. And
90% of the banks in Liberia are foreign owned, Nigerian, most of the Nigerians banks. They
that
got
could be
capacity.
also another
They
problem.
bring in the second people into different areas. And most of the talents you have in Liberia, that trained Liberians are working in those sectors. I know the children. The children have learned the banks are capacitated when it comes to employees and skilled people. Underwriting department, very unique. Audit department, IT system, some of the best cloud. We got the best system in our country with those banks. UBA, GT Bank are the two best performing banks when it comes to non-performing loans. They do some of the best banks that operate in our country. The problem we're having is unique to Liberia, but 90% of our banks are owned foreigners. Only one bank we own, like LBDR. No other
It's
bank.
a major problem.
That's a
Okay.
real issue.
From two, we're not to one.
Sonny Gabriel, let me say this though. I know we've done a lot of justice. We have done a lot of justice to this problem. It seems to me that the more we talk, the more we see the problems. We've run over our time, so I will just in a few seconds ask each of you guys to give your parting comments.
Right.
But I wanted to throw this at you so you can consider in your parting comments. Do you think it makes sense that come January we have a new president, that president actually, in addition to the institution that exists, hire a trade envoy, somebody who will have access to the president, but who will be able to integrate the voices of people in the private sector, whether in the bank and in the various industry, to be able to drive a general business policy that he can sell to the president, without just having a structured ministry that is not why it's on paper, but they are not with the word, I'll use Gabriel word, they are not intentional. Yeah. So let's go around with a partner statement. I mean, who want to pick up first?
I can go first. So if you look at the story of Ireland, it became one of the biggest destination of. If you look at the story of Ireland, it became one of the biggest destinations for investment, right? The same thing with and the reason how they got the Apple, the Google to set up shop there, because I think somebody alluded to this, they were intentional of having a trade team on the road. These guys will go from different country to invite those companies to come to do business in Ireland. To answer your question, and in my part and comment, what I would like to say is that the way we've ran Liberia since our inception, the way the government structure, whether is as everything is ran, it has to change. And whoever, as you keep alluding to, whoever comes in, if it's a different administration, they have to take an inventory of that. The best way to be able to change is to go back to your history and learn your history and see the pitfall that other people have made, for which we haven't gotten to where we need to get to, and you'll be able to correct that. So I do agree with you. If a different president were to come in and take over as a president, that is something they have to do. Like, you have to sell Liberia, one, to the private sector, especially those in the diaspora, but also other investors as well that want to go into that country. But in order to do that, there are a lot of structural things you have to fix. The rule of law, like we keep talking about, the contract enforcement. If I go into a contract with Mr. Nyema, I want to know that if that contract goes south, right? We have a commercial code that can do that, right? Those things are not enforced. I should not be able to come to Alfonso, and because Alfonso is the judge, to be able to bribe him to be able to rule in my favor. Like, there are a lot of things that need to be fixed from a structural perspective, and whoever comes in needs to do that. Like, you should not have any fear of being out, like being labeled as somebody as too liberal. You should not have any fear of doing that, because we've been in this place for so long. I would say that quickly in Alain. I tell people, go look at the history of Liberia. There were one point in time, we were the second highest growing economy in the world for 8 years in a row. 8 years in a row that people from the Western world, the Chicago Bull School of Economics, they were going there to find out what we were doing. But that level of growth never transformed into anything. It was just on the surface. And we have been doing things on the surface because nobody in our country benefited from it. No infrastructure, whether hard infrastructure or soft infrastructure, or the intermediary that needs to be existing for us to build up on, none of that was built. So if you had to come in, you will have to look at the history, see why we never got to that point, and make sure you do things completely different than it currently is right now. So I'll leave it on that. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Gabriel.
Yeah, I'll go. A couple of years ago, the Consul General for Atlanta, Liberian Consul General in Atlanta, Cynthia Blanford, in collaboration with Liba and the Liberian Consul General in Minnesota, with George, put together an organization, a trip. They took the National Black MBA Association to Liberia. And these are the president of the MBA Association at the time was an executive, former executive at I think ExxonMobil, one of those oil companies in Texas. And this is the biggest black organization in the world. Black. The MBA stands for Master of Business Administration. So they had business in Ghana. They were doing things in Ghana. So she took them to Liberia to show them that Liberia is an option. And I remember we had the foreign minister, the Chamber of Commerce, the Liba, Liberia, a lot of other business entities there. And there was a panel, right? And one of the ladies in the visiting group, I think there was about 10 to 15 of them probably, asked the panel, the Liberian, leaders, a question. Say, what should we, when we hear the word Liberia, what should we know? What should we think of? What should come to mind? And they were all stunned. And, they couldn't answer. And then one of them said, well, we are iron ore and rubber. And she's like, no, you guys, that's back then. You guys are not known for that anymore. There's other countries that are leading producer of iron ore and rubber in the world now. So what do you want us to know your country for? And nobody had an answer. So I said that because if Liberia doesn't establish an identity as to what we want our country to be for, and work towards that, and we don't have an overall strategy that we can take that strategy and implement it on a lower level to make sure everything we're doing, feeds into that strategy and move forward, we are not going to go anywhere. We're just going to be turning around. It doesn't matter what kind of excellent ideas we come up with. We're just going to be looking at ourselves. China today is the manufacturing capital of the world. Everybody goes to China for that. When it comes to technology, employees, export, India is known for that. In Africa, Ghana has taken Ghana is now known as the country of return. Liberia really is the country.
Yeah, should be.
Ghana has taken that, and we, not being regional and innovative, we decided to do the same thing, and did it even worse than what Ghana did. Whereas it took Ghana years to plan for that. Ivory Coast is known for cocoa. All these countries have an identity, and in as much as it may not be the only thing they're producing, but that's the leading thing. When you think of that, when you hear that country's name, that's what people know. When you go to the Caribbean nations, they have even spread out their education system. If you want to do engineering and tourism education, the best engineering and tourism school is in Trinidad and Tobago. And you want to do medical, you go to Jamaica. They have it spread out. So Liberia has to have a strategy. We have to identify what we want to be known for, and we have to work towards it intentionally. If not, we are just playing games with ourselves.
Okay, let me answer the question. Yeah, let me answer the question, Sarah. Yes, we need someone in our role, but it's more integrated. One of the things the person will be doing would be, before our president make an international trade, whether you go into France, you go into China, you go into the US, before they get there, we already package something, a concept note, idea of the things that we want to do. What Marcus talked about is our unique, proposition. Unique selling position. What is it that people know about? What we known for then was, because of that maritime program, we were known as an international financial center, but we didn't build the capacity. We didn't build around that. So we could have, and that's why you see many banks, foreign banks came in. Liberia is currently operating at 10% of its capacity, productive capacity. 10%, Liberia currently. So yes, we need that kind of pricing that we will have. The second thing I will do, because you have that pricing, before you get into office, I know when it comes to concession, what needs to be done in those concessions. The debt concession, what needs to be done, I know. When it comes to infrastructure, I know what is difficult to monetize. Roads. It's difficult to monetize roads. So how do I make sure I find the money for roads? When it comes to energy, I know that I can get enough money for energy from the private sector. I can monetize energy due to the Transco CLG. I know I can do that. I know I can monetize water and sanitation. So those different sectors, you know how to play there and put them in perspective, and how you can raise money around there. Do not be aid dependent. That's our problem. So if we got to have that person who understand those things, who can put these concepts together, and who can make sure they can network and get things done. So when I get on the road to France, I know what we're going for specifically when we get to France. When we go to China, I know we're going to negotiate for specifically when we get to China, because those things are already done ahead. We already shared documents with our counterpart, and when we get there, we know our person just going out to handshake and get close deals. That's is what we need to do. So we need that kind of pricing, but that person has to be integrated and understand it. Not somebody just pick out political figurehead, just mere political figurehead, and you put it in place. Thank you.
That's precisely the point.
There was a concept in place? Would that be, would brilliant ideas, by the way, guys. The issue of trade representative. Didn't we have trade representatives?
We don't.
Not somebody in that specific role other than the Minister of Finance. So you got
NIC. Look at NIC as that type of pricing. But NIC has a role. NIC role will be there, but you need somebody in the office of the president who will direct and coordinate those things with all the line ministries and agencies when it comes to that. So I will put up. Okay, I say I want to make sure that we build 2,000 megawatts of energy because we want to set the West African power pool. It's a strategy. It's an idea. Then I will figure out in my process, how we're going to raise the money, because government doesn't have the budget for that. How we're going to raise the money and who to touch and how to connect that. So then you put those things in perspective before you go to make your trip, before you do your road shows and things. But don't those things happen? You guys get the office soon money, they get inauguration for party, the next is figuring out. So what we do now next? Okay, budget, national budget we're going to raise. That's it.
And it's not new to I've started a
So maybe
meeting
we
with
should have people at the various embassies also reaching out. Who's
That's the
portfolio
idea. Yeah.
Yeah, Alfonso, here why I said that though. I've started a meeting with the president of Liberia, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, here in the city of Houston, where we brought in capital, big businesses, and they said, she was a star, first African female president. The guy saying, "Look, madam, how can we help you? What is it that what are the challenges you have?" And she was struggling to say anything. She didn't have something to
Totally
say.
agree.
Now the institutions that we already have, I see somebody alluded to the NIC. The institutions are more or less they are too regular. They are stagnant. You can see the outcomes that we have had over time, even in other developed societies where there are urgency in terms of the need for deliverables in certain area. The government, the president will create he will create an envoy. With that corruption, he will take a corruption eye, even though there is a Department of Justice, where he will say, "Look, because of the urgency of this stuff, I'm going to put you directly responsible to coordinate all the institutions that are designed for this and give me a specific outcome over a particular period." And because of the vitality of trade, and that's why I use the guys in Ivory Coast, they've gone far ahead. Yeah, they've had a structure, but you can see they have an ownership of the economy.
Yeah.
All the things we are talking about is all these small things about it, 16 or set aside businesses, the issue of access to capital, the enormous opportunity that is in the humanitarian development industry with USAID and other people that we're not even benefiting from. The challenges that they even face in throwing millions of dollars to institutions or government without outcomes. We need to have somebody who has access to authority, who can coordinate those agencies to be able to get them in line, even if it's for a particular period until those institutions are fairly stable. And maybe we need to replicate that same envoy for other areas where the needs exist. Because look, there is a complacency in the way we have governed our country as though everything all right when nothing all right, and we don't see any maneuvers to be able to address the challenges that we have. So I'll pass it on to you, Alfonso, so you can close us up. I think we've covered this enough. Yeah.
No, I think our guest did justice to the topic. There's a lot of key points that were raised. One, that it's good that we have certain businesses set aside for Liberians, but it's not enough. We need to also provide the resources, and we need business incubators that will help to train these people and make sure they manage the resources as a way, really, of building a strong financial economic middle class, because that's what the country needs. I think that's really powerful. The other things to talk about is establishing cooperatives, which we did in the past. Implement partnership laws that exist, so as a way of also attracting capital, to Liberians who can invest in those aspects but don't have the resources to do so. I'm happy we discussed the issue of Liberians not paying back debt, because to some extent it does exist, but not on a large scale. But if we do all of these interventions that we talk about, we can drop it even further. Intentionality, I think that's the key word here tonight. We have to be intentional and deliberate about A, developing policies and programs, and B, implementing and enforcing them. So I think those were very. Finally, we also discussed that there's a significant role for LIBA and other professional organizations to play. So there's one role for government. There's also a role for professional organizations and professionals to play. I mean, that's my summary of the discussion tonight. I think it was great. And thank you guys. It was really. I hope that policymakers and politicians, people who are running for office, are listening to you all and will take on some of the things that you all said tonight.
Yeah, thank you guys for showing up. And the link to the show is on YouTube and Facebook, but we also can share the link directly to you guys so you have it. So we can have it as a repository to share. I think this was a good. We did good justice to this concern we have. What you didn't say in your summary is the need for us to have that trade.
Trade person. I'm sorry. That's very key. That's very, very important.
Yeah. Okay. So, but thanks a lot, man. Thanks for
you guys.
Thanks for consent to join to accept the invite and join us. I think this is a good contribution to the general body of knowledge that we are trying to build for our country. And thank you guys. You guys
Thank
have
you all, and nice to meet you all.
Yeah,
Hopefully, I'll
We'll
connect with you
circle
guys.
back. We'll try to circle back with you all. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you guys. Take care. Yeah.
okay.